Hey everyone, I'm Mono Scaling here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, get comfortable and relax. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 42 years old, work in IT support for a healthcare company in Portland, and I've never believed in anything I couldn't troubleshoot or Google. That's important context for what I'm about to tell you, because what happened at Backbone Ridge in the Ochoko National Forest last September didn't make sense then, and it makes even less sense now. I went alone. My wife Jennifer had taken our daughter Emma to visit her mother in Sacramento, and I'd been planning this trip for months, a chance to disconnect, do some hiking, maybe catch up on the stack of books I'd been meaning to read. The Ochoko isn't as famous as the Cascades further west, but that's exactly why I picked it. Fewer people, more space to think. The RV I rented was a 2019 Winnebago, nothing fancy but serviceable. I picked it up on a Thursday morning and drove the 3 hours east from Portland, watching the landscape transition from green Douglas firs to the drier ponderosa pine forests of central Oregon. The woman at the rental place, Diane, her name tag said, had been unusually chatty about where I was headed. "Ochoko, huh?" she'd said, scanning my driver's license. "You staying at one of the developed campgrounds?" "Backbone Ridge Recreation Site," I told her. Found it online, looked quiet. She'd pause then, just for a second, before handing back my license. "Yeah, it's quiet all right. You going solo?" I'd confirmed I was, and she'd nodded slowly. "Just make sure you've got enough supplies. Cell service out there is pretty much non-existent once you're past Mill Creek." I'd thanked her and thought nothing of it. People always get weird about solo camping, like you can't survive 3 days without constant human contact. The drive to Backbone Ridge took longer than Google Maps predicted. The last 15 miles were on Forest Service roads that barely qualified as maintained. The RV handled it fine, but I had to take it slow around some of the switchbacks. By the time I reached the recreation site, it was nearly 4 in the afternoon. The place was exactly as advertised. A small clearing with 6 RV spots, each with a picnic table and fire ring, surrounded by ponderosa pines and juniper. A vault toilet sat at the far end near a dirt trail that supposedly led to a viewpoint. A hand-painted sign near the entrance read, "Backbone Ridge Recreation Site, elevation 4,100 FT. Only one other RV was there when I arrived, a vintage Airstream in Spot 3, maybe from the 70s, silver and rounded. No one was outside, but I could see movement through the window. I pulled into Spot 5, giving them space. The etiquette of dispersed camping is to maintain distance when possible. I spent the next hour setting up. The RV's generator worked fine, and I had a full tank of water. The propane was topped off. I set up my camping chair outside, got the small grill situated, and unpacked my cooler. Everything was exactly as it should be. Around 6, I walked over to the vault toilet. That's when I got my first good look at the Airstream. Up close, it was in better condition than I'd thought. The aluminum shell was polished, the tires looked new. But the curtains were drawn on all the windows and there was no vehicle parked nearby. No truck, no car, nothing. I mentioned it because it struck me as odd, but not alarming. Maybe they'd hiked out for the day. Maybe someone else had dropped them off. People camp in weird ways sometimes. That first evening was pleasant. I grilled a burger, drank 2 beers, and read for a while as the sun set. The temperature dropped fast after dark. That's high desert for you. So I moved inside the RV around 8:30. I tried to start one of the movies I'd downloaded, but I was tired from the drive and ended up in bed by 10. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. because I needed to piss. The RV's bathroom was fine, but I've always preferred going outside when camping. Something about the stars, I guess. I pulled on my shoes and a fleece and stepped out into the cold. The Airstream's lights were on. All of them. Every window glowed yellow against the darkness, and I could hear music coming from inside. Something orchestral, strings and piano. It wasn't loud, but in the complete silence of the forest, it carried clearly. I did my business and went back inside. It was none of my concern if they wanted to stay up late. The next morning, Friday, I got up around 7:30. I made coffee in the RV's little kitchen and sat outside with my camp chair positioned to catch the early sun. The Airstream's lights were off now, curtains still drawn. No signs of life. I spent the morning hiking. There was a trail that headed northeast from the recreation site, supposedly leading to an overlook with views of the Ochoco Valley. The trail was well marked initially, but became less distinct as I climbed. About 2 miles in, I found something strange. A small structure, maybe 8 feet by 10 feet, made of logs and corrugated metal. It wasn't on any map. The structure was old but maintained. The metal roof was intact and someone had recently swept the dirt floor inside. There was a wooden shelf against one wall, and on it sat a dozen canned goods. Green beans, corn, tomato soup, tuna fish. The cans looked new. The labels were current, nothing expired. But here's what bothered me. The cans were arranged too carefully. All labels facing forward, organized by type, perfectly aligned. Not the way someone would hastily stock a shelter. More like someone had set up a display. There was also a notebook on the shelf, spiral-bound, the kind you'd buy at any drugstore. I opened it. The pages were blank except for the first one, which had a single sentence written in neat block letters. Take what you need, leave something behind. I left it alone and hiked back to the RV, arriving around 1 p.m. The Airstream still showed no signs of activity. No one sitting outside, no door open, no movement visible through the windows. I thought about knocking just to check if they were okay, but that felt intrusive. That afternoon, I drove into the nearest town, Prenville, about 40 minutes away, to get more ice and a few supplies I'd forgotten. The woman at the grocery store checkout was friendly enough until I mentioned where I was staying. Backbone Ridge? She'd repeated, scanning my items slower. That's Forest Service land, right? Yeah, I said. Nice spot. Quiet. She'd bagged my ice in silence, then added, You see the old shelter up there? I did, actually. Came across it this morning on the trail. She'd nodded, but didn't elaborate. When I'd prompted her, You know anything about it? She'd just shrugged. Forest Service maintains some of those old structures. For emergencies, I guess. I paid and left. The interaction stuck with me, though I couldn't say why. Back at the campsite by late afternoon, I noticed tire tracks in the dirt near the Airstream, fresh ones cutting across the grass toward the forest. They disappeared into the trees about 30 feet past the clearing. Still no sign of the Airstream's occupants, but clearly someone had been driving around. I made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, nothing fancy, and ate inside the RV while listening to a podcast. Around 8 p.m., I stepped outside to brush my teeth at the small sink station near the vault toilet. That's when I saw someone standing near the Airstream. It was a man, I think. Average height, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie with the hood up. He was standing perfectly still about 10 feet from the Airstream's door, facing it. Not moving, just standing there. I called out, Hey, everything okay? He didn't respond, didn't turn around. The music had started again from inside the Airstream, the same orchestral piece from the night before. I walked a few steps closer. Hello? The figure turned then, but the motion was wrong. Too smooth, too complete, like a mannequin being rotated. I couldn't see his face, the hood cast it in shadow, but I had the distinct impression he was looking directly at me. Sorry, I said, suddenly feeling like I'd intruded. Just checking if you need anything. He raised one hand. Not a wave, exactly. Just lifted it palm facing me and held it there for several seconds. Then he lowered it and walked around the side of the Airstream, disappearing from view. I waited a minute, but he didn't reappear. The music continued playing. I went back to my RV and locked the door, which I hadn't bothered doing the previous night. That night I slept badly. I kept waking up, convinced I'd heard footsteps outside, but every time I checked through the window, there was nothing. The Airstream's light stayed on until sometime after 3 a.m., when I finally fell into a deeper sleep. Saturday morning I woke to silence. The Airstream's lights were off again. I made coffee and sat outside, deliberately not looking in that direction, trying to convince myself that the unease I felt was irrational. Around 9 a.m., I decided to drive out to the trailhead for Stein's Pillar, a rock formation about 20 minutes north. I needed to get away from the campsite for a few hours, clear my head. The hike was good. 4 miles round trip, sunny and warm with other hikers around. Normal people doing normal things. I got back to Backbone Ridge around 3 p.m. and immediately knew something was different. The airstream was gone. Spot 3 was empty. No tire tracks, no trash. Nothing to indicate it had ever been there. The grass wasn't even compressed where it had been parked. I stood there for a full minute trying to process this. RVs that size don't just vanish without leaving some trace. I walked over to where it had been. The ground was completely undisturbed. I checked the vault toilet area, thinking maybe I'd somehow gotten confused about which spot they'd been in, but no. There was no airstream anywhere in the recreation site. Then I noticed something else. On my picnic table, which I'd left bare when I drove out that morning, sat 4 canned goods. Green beans, corn, tomato soup, and tuna fish. The exact same brands from the shelter I'd found on the trail. Labels facing forward, perfectly aligned. I didn't touch them. I stood there looking at them while my brain tried to find a rational explanation. Someone from the airstream had left them as... what? A gift? A warning? And then driven away without leaving any tracks? I went inside my RV and locked the door. It was barely 4 p.m., but I closed all the curtains and tried to think through the situation logically. Someone was messing with me. That was the only explanation. Some locals having fun with the out-of-towner. The airstream people, or person, had been part of it. The shelter on the trail, the cans, all of it staged. But that didn't explain the lack of tire tracks. It didn't explain how they'd known I'd be gone that afternoon, and it didn't explain the feeling I'd had watching that figure the night before, the wrongness of its movement. I called Jennifer, forgetting there was no cell service. The call failed immediately. I tried 3 more times before giving up. Here's where I should have left. Packed up the RV and driven back to Portland. But it was already getting dark, and the idea of navigating those Forest Service roads at night felt worse than staying. I convinced myself I'd leave first thing in the morning. I made a simple dinner, soup from a can I'd brought myself, not touching the ones on the table, and tried to read. The words wouldn't stick. I kept looking at the curtained windows, expecting to see movement outside. Around 11 p.m., I heard a vehicle. The engine sound was distinct, rough and older, like the truck some of the Forest Service rangers drove. I pulled back the curtain slightly and saw headlights approaching, but they stopped at the recreation site entrance, maybe 50 yards from my RV. The engine idled there for several minutes. I couldn't see the vehicle clearly, just the bright headlights cutting through the darkness. Then they shut off and the engine noise stopped. Silence. I waited, watching through the crack in the curtain. Nothing moved. No one got out of the vehicle. No doors opened. The darkness was complete without the headlights. This continued for almost an hour. I stood there the entire time watching, waiting for something to happen. My legs started cramping. My eyes strained against the dark, but nothing changed. Finally, around midnight, I heard the engine start again. The headlights came back on and the vehicle, whatever it was, backed up and drove away. The sound faded gradually until the silence returned. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the small dining table in the RV, keeping one eye on the windows, jumping at every small noise. Every branch creak, every settling sound the RV made. The temperature dropped to near freezing, and I could hear my breath in the air despite the propane heater running. Around 4 a.m., I noticed light outside. Not sunrise, it was too early in the wrong direction. I looked out the front window and saw that the 4 cans on the picnic table were glowing. Not brightly, but a definite luminescence, like they'd been painted with something phosphorescent. I stared at them until the approaching dawn began to wash out the effect. By the time real daylight arrived, the cans looked normal again. Just 4 ordinary cans sitting on my picnic table. At 6:30 a.m. Sunday, I started the RV and began packing everything up. I was exhausted but functioning on adrenaline. I left the 4 cans on the table. I wasn't touching them. The RV started fine, everything mechanically sound. I pulled out of spot 5 and headed toward the exit. The Forest Service road looked the same as when I'd arrived, morning light filtering through the ponderosa pines. I drove for about 10 minutes, following the winding road downhill. Then I recognized something. A distinctive lightning-struck tree on the left, its top half missing and charred black. I'd noticed it on the drive-in, but I should have been past it already. I'd been driving away from the campsite for 10 minutes. The lightning-struck tree was only a few hundred yards from the recreation site entrance. I pulled over and checked my phone. No service, but the GPS still worked. According to the map, I was exactly where the lightning-struck tree should be, heading away from Backbone Ridge on Forest Road 22, making progress toward the highway. I kept driving. After another 15 minutes, I passed the lightning-struck tree again. I stopped the RV and got out. The road behind me and ahead of me looked identical. The same grade, the same trees, the same ruts in the dirt. I walked back down the road about 100 feet, looking for anything distinctive, any sign that might tell me what was happening. That's when I saw the tire tracks, my own tracks from the RV. They came down the road toward me, then curved off into the forest on the left. Not sharply, gradually like I'd steered off the road, and continued through the trees until they disappeared. But I hadn't driven off the road. I was standing on the road. The RV was parked on the road behind me. I followed the tracks on foot. They went about 30 feet into the forest, weaving between trees that the RV couldn't possibly have fit between, and then they just stopped. No impact marks, no sign of what happened. The tracks simply ended in a small clearing as if the vehicle had been lifted straight up into the air. I went back to the RV, checked the tires, the undercarriage, everything. No damage, no scratches from tree branches. The RV was completely clean. I got back in and drove again, faster this time. I passed the lightning-struck tree 3 more times over the next hour. Each time I tried something different, taking different curves in the road, watching the odometer, even marking the tree with spray paint from the RV's emergency kit. But the mark was always there when I passed it again, which meant I wasn't imagining things. I was genuinely going in a circle. Around 9 a.m. I stopped again. I was breathing hard, panicking. I forced myself to calm down and think. There had to be an explanation. GPS glitches happen. Maybe the roads had changed since the map was updated. Maybe I was disoriented from lack of sleep. I decided to hike out, leave the RV and walk. But when I got out and started walking down the road, I quickly became disoriented. The trees seemed to shift position. The road curved when I was sure it had been straight. After 20 minutes of walking, I found myself back at the RV, approaching it from the direction I just left. I tried hiking in a straight line through the forest instead, using the sun to keep my bearing. But the forest was denser than it looked, and after struggling through underbrush and deadfall for what felt like an hour, I emerged onto the road right next to the RV. That's when I heard the music again, the same orchestral piece from the Airstream. It was coming from back toward Backbone Ridge, faint but unmistakable. I drove toward the sound, not because I wanted to, but because it seemed like the only direction that might actually lead anywhere different. The road sloped upward, and after a few minutes, I was back at the recreation site. The Airstream was there. Spot 3. Silver and rounded, curtains drawn, exactly as it had been on Thursday. I parked in spot 5 and sat there trying to decide what to do. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this wasn't possible, that I was experiencing some kind of breakdown. But the RV was real. The road was real. The Airstream was real. I got out and approached the Airstream. Up close I could hear movement inside. Not the music, which had stopped, but footsteps. Someone pacing back and forth. I knocked on the door. "Hello? I need help. I can't find my way out of here." The footsteps stopped. "Please," I said. "Something's wrong with the roads. My GPS isn't working right. Do you have a satellite phone or anything?" No response. I tried the door handle. It was unlocked. The door opened smoothly. Inside, the Airstream was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no supplies, no belongings. Just bare aluminum walls and floor. but it had been recently cleaned. I could smell the chemical scent of cleaner, see the damp streaks on the floor where someone had mopped. On the far wall, written in what looked like marker, was text. The same neat block letters from the notebook in the shelter. You took nothing. You must leave something behind. I backed out of the airstream and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I walked back to my RV and sat in the driver's seat trying to think. What had I taken? I'd taken nothing from the shelter. I hadn't touched the canned goods on my table. I hadn't removed anything from the site except my own trash, which I'd properly bagged and stored in the RV. Unless... I thought about the hike to the shelter. I'd opened the notebook. I'd read the message. Did that count as taking something? Information? I looked at the 4 cans still sitting on my picnic table. Then I looked at the airstream. The door was open again, though I'd definitely closed it. I understood then, though I didn't want to. The cans were an offering. They'd been left for me to take and I'd refused. By refusing, I'd violated some rule I didn't understand. I got out of the RV and walked to the picnic table. The cans were warm to the touch despite the cool morning air. I picked up the can of green beans. It felt lighter than it should have, as if it were empty. I walked to the airstream with the can. The door was open wider now, hanging loose on its hinges. I stepped inside. The interior had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. There was a small shelf identical to the one in the shelter, and on it were 3 cans: corn, tomato soup, and tuna. The same ones from my table. They'd simply appeared there, moved without anyone touching them. I placed the can of green beans on the shelf next to the others. They were perfectly aligned, labels facing forward. As soon as I set it down, I heard the RV's engine start. I ran outside. The RV was running, but I hadn't left the keys inside. They were in my pocket. I pulled them out to confirm. Yes, my keys were in my hand, but the RV was running. I got in. The gauges looked normal. Fuel, oil pressure, battery, all fine. I put the RV in drive and headed toward the exit, not letting myself think too hard about what had just happened. This time, the road felt different. The curves were sharper, the grades steeper. I drove for 20 minutes without seeing the lightning-struck tree. The forest gradually changed, becoming less dense. After 40 minutes, I reached the highway. I didn't stop driving until I reached Prineville. I pulled into the same grocery store parking lot and sat there for a long time, breathing. My phone picked up signal immediately. Dozens of messages from Jennifer downloaded. She'd been trying to reach me since Friday evening, increasingly worried. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Marcus? Jesus, where have you been? I've been calling for 2 days. I'm fine, I said. I'm in Prineville. I'm coming home. What happened? Did you have a good trip? I looked at the RV in my rearview mirror. Through the back window, I could see the small dining area. On the table sat 4 cans: green beans, corn, tomato soup, and tuna. Labels facing forward, perfectly aligned. Yeah, I told her. It was quiet. I turned in the RV on Monday morning. Diane, the rental agent, did a thorough walk-through inspection. She checked the mileage, the fuel level, the propane tanks. Then she opened the cabinets and found the 4 cans. These yours? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. She picked up the can of green beans and frowned. This is empty. She shook it. No sound. She checked the others. They're all empty. I didn't say anything. She looked at me for a long moment. Did you go to that shelter? Up on the trail? Yes. Did you take anything from it? No. She nodded slowly. Good. That's good. She tossed the empty cans in a nearby trash bin. Don't worry about these. Happens sometimes. What happens? She didn't answer. Just finished her inspection and handed me the receipt. You're all set, Mr. Webb. Thanks for choosing us. I drove home to Portland. Jennifer and Emma got back that evening full of stories about their trip. I told them I'd had a relaxing time, did some hiking, read a few books. That was all. But here's the thing I can't explain. 2 weeks later, I went to make dinner and opened our pantry. On the bottom shelf, pushed to the back, were 4 cans: green beans, corn, tomato soup, and tuna. The same brands. Labels facing forward, perfectly aligned. I checked the receipts from my last several grocery trips. I hadn't bought any of those items. Jennifer confirmed she hadn't either. I left them there. I didn't touch them. They're still there now, 6 weeks later. I check every few days. The cans haven't moved. They're not glowing, not making sounds, just sitting there. Waiting, maybe. Sometimes at night I hear orchestral music. Faint, like it's coming from far away. Jennifer doesn't hear it. Emma doesn't hear it. But I do. Last week I found a pamphlet on my car windshield. No postage, no markings. Just a simple trifold brochure for Backbone Ridge Recreation Site, with photos of the clearing, the vault toilet, the picnic tables. On the back, in neat block letters, was a handwritten note. Come back when you're ready. I showed it to Jennifer and told her everything. The airstream, the roads that looped, the figure in the hoodie, all of it. She listened quietly, then suggested I might have been more tired than I realized, that solo camping can play tricks on your perception, especially with poor sleep. She's probably right. I want her to be right. But I can't explain the cans in our pantry. I can't explain the pamphlet. And I can't explain why, when I close my eyes at night, I can perfectly picture the inside of that shelter on the trail, the wooden shelf, the notebook with its single instruction. I've started having dreams about driving. In them, I'm back in the RV, following the Forest Service road, passing the lightning-struck tree over and over. But each time I pass it, the tree looks different. More damaged, more dead. And in the distance, I can always see the Airstream, parked in spot 3, its lights on, music playing. In the dreams, I know I have to go back. I know that I left something behind, something the forest wants, something I promised without meaning to promise it. I haven't returned to Ochoko. I tell myself I won't. But the pamphlet is on my desk at work, and sometimes I catch myself looking at it, reading that note on the back. Come back when you're ready. The worst part is, I think I'm starting to understand what that means. Not when I'm ready, not when I've worked up the courage or found a good weekend, but when the forest decides I'm ready. When whatever debt I incurred by opening that notebook, by seeing what I saw, by leaving those cans untouched for too long, when that debt comes due. Yesterday, I noticed something new. The 4 cans in our pantry aren't in the same position I left them. They've moved slightly, rotated. The labels no longer face perfectly forward. They're turned now, angled, like they're pointing toward something. I used a compass. The cans are all pointing southeast, toward Ochoko, toward Backbone Ridge. Jennifer thinks I should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe. Someone who specializes in anxiety or stress-related delusions. I've made an appointment for next Tuesday. I'll go. I'll try. But I know what I know. I know the road looped. I know the Airstream disappeared and reappeared. I know those cans were offered and refused, and now they're back, pointing me towards something I can't name. And I know that eventually, maybe in a week, maybe in a year, I'm going to get in my car and drive east. I'm going to follow the highway to Prineville, then take the Forest Service road to Backbone Ridge. I'm going to park in spot 5 and wait. I don't know what will happen then. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll spend a peaceful few days in the forest and come home with nothing more than a funny story about how stress made me imagine things. Or maybe I'll find out what I was supposed to leave behind. Maybe the forest will show me what it's been waiting for all along. The cans are pointing southeast. The music plays at night. The pamphlet sits on my desk. I'm not ready yet, but I will be. Story 2. My name is Emily Parker, and I need to tell someone what happened at Flaming Gorge last month. The police won't listen. My husband thinks I'm losing my mind. But I know what I saw, and I know that the Green River changed direction overnight. We'd been planning the trip for 6 months. Mark got the RV cheap from a guy at his office who was upgrading, and we figured we'd break it in with a week at Flaming Gorge in northeastern Utah. Just the 2 of us, no kids yet. One last adventure before we started seriously trying for a family. Mark had been working 60-hour weeks at the engineering firm, and I'd just finished a brutal semester teaching high school English. We needed this. The drive from Salt Lake took about 3 hours. Mark drove while I navigated, though the route was straightforward enough. I-80 east, then down through the high desert until the landscape opened up into those massive Red Canyon walls. The RV handled better than I expected. It was a 2015 model, 28 feet, with a small bedroom in back, a kitchenette, and a dining area that converted into a second bed we'd never use. We arrived at the campground around 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday in late September. The season was winding down, which meant fewer people. Perfect. The campground host, a weathered woman in her 60s named Carol, checked us in and pointed us towards Site 47, which she said had the best view of the river. She was right. We backed the RV into the spot, and when I stepped out, I could see the Green River maybe 50 yards through the pine trees. The water moved south, swift and greenish-brown from the mountain runoff. Mark hooked up the electricity and water while I unpacked our groceries and started organizing the inside. "This is exactly what we needed," Mark said when he came back in. He wrapped his arms around me from behind while I was putting away cereal boxes. No cell service, no internet, just us. I turned and kissed him. Just us and Carol. He laughed. She seems nice enough. Probably has great stories. The first 2 days were perfect. We hiked down to the river on Saturday afternoon and sat on the rocks, not talking much, just watching the water flow. Mark brought his fishing gear on Sunday morning and caught 3 rainbow trout, which we cooked for dinner on the RV's small stove. I read a novel I'd been meaning to finish for months. We made love with the windows open, the September air cool enough that we needed a blanket afterward. Monday morning, I woke before Mark. The sun wasn't quite up yet, but there was enough light to see. I made coffee and took my mug outside, standing on the packed dirt of our campsite in my pajamas and jacket. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke from someone else's early fire. That's when I noticed something odd. I walked down toward the river, careful not to spill my coffee. Through the trees, I could see the water. It was definitely lighter now, the sun coming up behind the canyon walls to the east. And the river was flowing south just like it had been since we arrived. I went back to the RV and drank my coffee at the small dining table, reading yesterday's newspaper we'd picked up in town. Mark got up around 7, groggy and smiling. "Morning, beautiful." "Morning. Coffee's fresh." We spent Monday doing very little. Mark wanted to drive around the reservoir, see some of the scenic overlooks. We packed sandwiches and took the truck, leaving the RV behind. The views were spectacular. Thousands of feet of red rock rising up from the turquoise water, eagles circling overhead. We didn't talk about work or the future or anything important. We just existed together. We got back to the campsite around 5. Mark started a fire in the metal ring while I heated up leftover chili. The sun set around 7:30, painting the canyon walls orange and pink. 2 other RVs were occupied in our section of the campground, but we rarely saw the people. Everyone kept to themselves. That night, I woke up around 3 in the morning needing to pee. The RV's bathroom was tiny, and I didn't want to wake Mark, so I grabbed a flashlight and my jacket and went outside. The campground had a bathroom building about 100 yards from our site. The night was cold and completely clear. No moon, but the stars were incredible, more than I'd ever seen in the city. I used the bathroom, washed my hands with the barely warm water, and walked back slowly, looking up at the Milky Way. That's when I heard it. A sound like rushing water, but wrong somehow. Too loud. I stopped walking and listened. The river was definitely louder than it had been earlier, almost roaring. Maybe the dam had released more water or something. I didn't know how these things worked. I went back to the RV and climbed into bed next to Mark, who didn't wake up. But I lay there for a while, listening to that sound, before I finally fell back asleep. The next morning, Tuesday, I woke up before Mark again. I made coffee and took it outside, following the same routine. The sun was just starting to touch the tops of the canyon walls. I walked down toward the river and stopped. The water was flowing north. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, my coffee getting cold in my hand, staring at the river. The Green River, which flowed south toward Colorado and eventually into the Colorado River itself, was moving north, upstream, against gravity. I walked closer, pushing through the pine branches until I was standing right at the water's edge. There was no question about it. The current was definitely moving north, back toward the dam at Flaming Gorge. I went back to the RV and stood in the doorway trying to think. Mark was still asleep. I looked at my phone even though I knew there was no service. The time said 6:47 a.m. Mark. I shook his shoulder. Mark, wake up. You need to see something. He sat up, rubbing his face. What's wrong? Just come outside, bring your coffee. He pulled on his jeans and a sweatshirt, clearly confused. I handed him a mug and led him down to the river. We stood there together, both of us watching the water flow north. That's not right, Mark said after a while. I know. Rivers don't flow backward. I know. Did they release water from the dam or something? Can that make it flow the other direction? I don't think so. How would that even work? Mark walked along the bank looking upstream and downstream. I followed him. The current was steady, consistent, definitely moving north. Debris in the water, leaves, small branches, were all being carried back toward the dam. Maybe we're confused about which way is which, Mark said, but his voice had no conviction in it. We're not confused. We've been here 4 days. The water was flowing south, now it's flowing north. Let's go ask Carol. We walked back to the RV and got dressed properly. The campground host's trailer was at the entrance, about a quarter mile from our site. Carol was outside watering some potted plants when we arrived. Morning, she said, smiling. How's everything going? Fine, Mark said. We just had a question about the river. Sure, what's up? Which direction does it flow? Carol looked at him like he'd asked her what color the sky was. South, toward Colorado. And it always flows south? Yeah, why? Mark glanced at me. We thought maybe, with the dam releasing water or something, could it ever flow the other direction? Carol shook her head. No, that doesn't make any sense. The dam's north of here. Water flows downhill from the dam south. It can flow faster or slower depending on the release, but it always goes south. Right, I said. Thanks. We walked back to our site in silence. When we got to the river, it was still flowing north. This doesn't make sense, Mark said. He was using his engineer voice, the one he used when he was trying to solve a problem systematically. There has to be an explanation. What explanation makes a river reverse direction overnight? I don't know. Maybe an earthquake? Shifting the ground somehow? We didn't feel an earthquake. Maybe we slept through it. I didn't argue with him, but I knew that wasn't it. We spent the rest of the morning trying to rationalize what we were seeing. Mark wanted to hike upstream, see if the whole river was flowing backward or just this section. But the terrain was rough, and after an hour of scrambling over rocks and through brush, we gave up. The river kept flowing north as far as we could see. We made lunch and ate in silence. The other RVs in our section were gone now. Apparently they'd left early in the morning. We were alone. Let's just pack up and go home, I said. We still have 3 days left. I don't care. This place is making me uncomfortable. Mark looked at me. It's just weird. It's not dangerous. How do you know? It's a river, Em. Rivers don't hurt people. But that wasn't what I meant. I meant that the wrongness of it, the fundamental impossibility of it, scared me in a way I couldn't articulate. Something had changed in the night, something that shouldn't be possible, and we were alone here with it. One more night, Mark said. If it still bothers you in the morning, we'll leave. But I think you're just freaked out because it's weird. Give it a day and it'll seem less scary. I agreed because I didn't want to fight, but I regretted it immediately. That afternoon, Mark tried fishing again. I stayed in the RV, reading my book but not retaining anything. Every few minutes I'd look out the window at the river, still flowing north. Around 4, I heard Mark come back. He opened the RV door and stepped inside, his face pale. What's wrong? I caught something. He held up his fishing rod. The line was cut. Something big. Snapped my line like it was nothing. A big fish. I don't know. I didn't see it. But the way it pulled, it didn't feel like a fish. What did it feel like? He shook his head. I don't know. Something that didn't want to be caught. We ate dinner early, before the sun went down. Neither of us wanted to admit it, but we were both nervous about nightfall. The temperature dropped fast once the sun was behind the canyon walls. Mark built a fire and we sat outside in our camp chairs, not talking much. Around 8:30 we heard a sound from down by the river. A splash like something large entering the water. Then another splash farther away. Probably a beaver, Mark said. Yeah, but it didn't sound like a beaver. We went inside the RV at 9 and locked the door, which we'd never done before. Mark checked all the windows, making sure they were latched. We got ready for bed and turned off the lights, but I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard the splashing again, closer this time, and then something else, a sound like breathing, deep and wet. Mark, I whispered, are you awake? Yeah. Do you hear that? Yeah. We lay there in the dark, listening. The breathing continued for maybe 5 minutes, moving around the RV. Then it stopped. I'm turning on the lights, Mark said. Don't. Why not? I don't want it to know we're awake. There's nothing out there. It's probably just a deer or something. But he didn't turn on the lights. Eventually, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the bedroom window, and Mark was already up. I could smell coffee. Morning, he said when I came out. He was looking out the window toward the river, still flowing north. We should leave. After breakfast. I'm not running away on an empty stomach. I wanted to argue, but I was hungry too. We made eggs and toast, ate quickly, barely tasting the food. Mark was just putting the dishes in the sink when we heard the knocking. 3 solid raps on the RV door. We looked at each other. Carol? Mark called out. No answer. 3 more knocks, harder this time. Mark went to the door and opened it. No one was there. He stepped outside, looked around. Hello? I came up behind him. The campsite was empty. The other RV spots in our section were still vacant. No cars, no people, nothing. Must have been a branch hitting the side, Mark said, but his voice was uncertain. That wasn't a branch. We packed up fast after that. Mark disconnected the water and electricity while I threw our remaining food and clothes into bags. We were ready to leave in 20 minutes. Mark started the RV's engine. It turned over once, twice, then died. He tried again. Nothing. Fuck. He tried a 3rd time, pumping the gas pedal. The engine wouldn't catch. What's wrong with it? I don't know. It was fine yesterday. He got out and opened the engine compartment, stared at the motor like he could diagnose the problem through sheer will. I knew he couldn't. Mark was a civil engineer, not a mechanic. We need to get Carol, I said. Maybe she knows someone. We walked to the host trailer. Carol wasn't outside this time. Mark knocked on her door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Maybe she went into town, I said. Her truck's here. He was right. Carol's beat-up Ford was parked next to the trailer. Mark tried the door handle. It was unlocked. He pushed it open. Carol, you in here? The trailer was neat and clean, but empty. Coffee mug on the counter, still warm. Radio playing softly, but no Carol. This is wrong, I said. We need to leave. We need to walk out if we have to. It's 3 miles to the main road, and then what? We flag down a car? Yes, exactly that. Mark looked at me, saw that I was serious. Okay, let me try the RV one more time. If it doesn't start, we walk. We went back to our site. Mark turned the key, and the engine roared to life immediately. See? He said, smiling with relief. Just flooded or something. I didn't smile back. We pulled out of the campsite and drove toward the exit. The campground was completely empty now. Not a single car or RV in any of the spots. The office where we'd checked in on Saturday had a closed sign hanging in the window. We reached the main road and turned east toward I-80. Mark drove faster than he should have, the RV swaying on the curves. Neither of us spoke. About 2 miles down the road, we passed a turnout with an informational sign about Flaming Gorge. Mark slowed down. "What are you doing?" "I want to check something." He pulled into the turnout and stopped. We both got out and walked to the overlook. Below us, maybe 500 feet down, was the Green River. It was flowing south. Mark and I stood there looking at the water, watching it move in its proper direction, north to south, downhill, following gravity like it was supposed to. "I don't understand," Mark said. I didn't either. We got back in the RV and drove home. Neither of us said much for the entire 3-hour drive. What was there to say? When we got back to our apartment in Salt Lake, Mark started researching. He spent hours on his laptop, reading about the Green River, about Flaming Gorge, about hydraulics and water flow, and whether there was any possible explanation for what we'd seen. He found nothing. I called the Flaming Gorge office a week later and asked about Carol. They said they didn't have a host named Carol. Their current host was a retired couple named Jim and Susan, and they'd been there for 3 years. Mark thinks we imagined it. He says the stress of work and the isolation made us see things that weren't there. He says rivers don't flow backward, so we couldn't have seen what we think we saw. He won't talk about it anymore. But I know what I saw. I know the river reversed direction overnight. I know Carol existed and then she didn't. I know something happened in that place, something that doesn't fit into the world the way we understand it. Last week, I was looking at a map of Utah, tracing the route we'd taken. I found Flaming Gorge, found the campground. But when I zoomed in on the satellite view trying to see Site 47, the image was corrupted. Just gray pixels, like someone had scrubbed it out. I tried refreshing the page. The pixels remained. Mark is talking about going back next summer. He says we need to face our fears, prove to ourselves that it was nothing. He's already looking at the RV, making sure it's ready for another trip. But I won't go, because I know what that place is now. I know that some rules can be broken, that some places exist outside the normal flow of things. And I know that rivers aren't supposed to run backward. When they do, it means something is wrong. Something fundamental has shifted, and you don't want to be there when it shifts back. If you're planning a trip to Flaming Gorge, if you're looking at that campground on the Green River, I'm telling you now, find somewhere else to go. And if you're there and you wake up one morning and the river has changed direction, don't try to understand it, just leave. Because I went back online yesterday and looked up Carol's trailer. I wanted to see if there was any record of her, any proof that she'd existed. I found something, but not what I expected. I found an old newspaper article from 1987. A campground host at Flaming Gorge named Carol Morrison had gone missing. Her trailer was found empty, coffee still warm on the counter, radio still playing. She was never found. The article mentioned one detail that made my blood cold. The week she disappeared, several campers had reported strange phenomena, equipment malfunctioning, sounds in the night, and the river for one night flowing the wrong direction. Story 3. My name is Daniel King. At least that's what everyone calls me now. I'm writing this in a motel room outside of Moab, Utah, 3 weeks after we left the RV park near Arches National Park. The police closed the case yesterday. They said Josh had a psychotic break and killed himself in the desert. They said I was lucky to survive. They said a lot of things that made sense to everyone except me. I need to write this down before I forget more than I already have, before the memories that don't belong to me push out the ones that do. It started as a simple weekend trip. Josh and I had been friends since college. 11 years of inside jokes, late-night drives, and the kind of comfortable silence you only get with someone who knows your worst stories and still picks up the phone. We'd both been grinding through shit jobs in Salt Lake City, and when Josh suggested we take his dad's old RV down to Arches for some hiking and beer, I didn't think twice. The RV was a 1987 Winnebago that smelled like old carpet and propane. Josh's dad had died 2 years earlier, and Josh kept saying he was going to sell it but never did. We loaded it up with camping chairs, a cooler full of cheap beer, and enough instant ramen to survive a nuclear winter. The plan was simple. 3 days, a few trails, disconnect from the world. We left on a Thursday morning in early September. The drive down was fine. Josh played his usual rotation of folk rock bands I pretended to hate but secretly liked, and we argued about whether The Thing or Alien was the better isolation horror film. Normal stuff. The kind of conversation that feels important when you're killing time on a highway. The RV park was called Red Valley Campground, about 15 miles outside Moab proper. It wasn't one of those polished KOA places with swimming pools and mini-golf. This was bare bones. Gravel sites, picnic tables, fire rings, and a central bathhouse that looked like it hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. There were maybe 20 sites total, spread out enough that you couldn't hear your neighbors unless they were really making noise. We pulled in around 2 p.m. The heat was oppressive. That dry, relentless Utah heat that makes you feel like you're being slowly cooked. The park was maybe half full. I noticed a family with 2 kids at the site nearest the entrance. An older couple with a pristine Airstream a few spots down, and a solo guy in a beat-up camper van at the far end. Everyone else was either out hiking or keeping to themselves. Josh backed the RV into Site 14. I remember the number because it was painted on a weathered wooden post that leaned slightly to the left, like it was trying to get away from something. We spent the first afternoon setting up camp and drinking beer in the shade of the RV's awning. Josh was in a good mood, better than I'd seen him in months. He'd been going through a rough breakup, and I think he needed this trip more than he'd let on. We made plans to hit the Devil's Garden Trail the next morning, early enough to beat the heat. That night, we built a fire and cooked hot dogs that tasted like charcoal and nostalgia. Josh told a story about his dad teaching him to fish, and I could tell he was tearing up a little but trying to hide it. Around 10 p.m., a park ranger stopped by to check that we'd paid our fee and remind us about the fire ban that would start in 2 days. She was maybe mid-40s with the kind of weathered face you get from spending your life outside. "You boys picked a good weekend," she said. "Weather should hold. Just keep an eye on the sky Saturday. Monsoon season's been weird this year." Josh thanked her and offered her a beer, which she declined. As she walked away, I noticed she stopped at the solo camper van and talked to the guy there for a few minutes. I couldn't hear what they said, but her body language changed. Less friendly, more official. "What do you think that's about?" I asked Josh. He shrugged. "Maybe the guy didn't pay, or he's got too many parking tickets. Who cares?" "Who cares?" That's what we said. We stayed up until midnight talking about nothing and everything. Josh fell asleep in his chair, and I had to shake him awake to get him inside the RV. He stumbled to the back bedroom, and I took the fold-out couch in the main cabin. The RV's thin walls did nothing to block out the night sounds. Crickets, distant coyotes, the occasional car passing on the main road. I fell asleep thinking about the hike tomorrow, about whether I'd remembered to pack enough sunscreen. I woke up wrong. That's the only way I can describe it. The light coming through the RV's windows was wrong, too bright, too early. My body felt wrong. Heavy. Like I'd been drugged or run a marathon in my sleep. I sat up on the fold-out couch and immediately felt dizzy, like the world had tilted slightly off its axis. My mouth tasted like copper. I looked down at my hands. They were my hands. Same scar on my left thumb from a childhood knife accident, same freckles on my wrists, but they didn't feel like my hands. It's hard to explain, like when you say a word over and over until it loses meaning, except it was my entire body. I stood up, and the dizziness got worse. The RV seemed smaller somehow, or maybe I was seeing it from a different angle. Details I hadn't noticed before jumped out at me. A water stain on the ceiling shaped like a moth, a loose screw on the cabinet hinge, a smell underneath the propane smell that reminded me of something I couldn't place. The bedroom door was closed. Josh must still be asleep. I went to the tiny bathroom and splashed water on my face. When I looked up at the mirror, I froze. It was my face. Same brown eyes, same slightly crooked nose from a high school basketball injury, same stubble I'd been too lazy to shave before the trip. But something about the reflection was off. The way the light hit it, the expression it wore when my face was neutral. I stared at myself for maybe 30 seconds trying to figure out what was wrong. Then I blinked. My reflection blinked a half second later. I jerked back from the mirror, my heart suddenly pounding. I blinked again, watching carefully. Normal. Synchronized. I must have been seeing things. Lack of sleep. Too much beer. Altitude adjustment. I opened the bathroom door and nearly walked straight into Josh. He was standing in the narrow hallway wearing the same clothes he'd fallen asleep in. A faded, modest mouse shirt and cargo shorts. His face was blank, expressionless. He didn't say anything, just stood there blocking my path. "Jesus, man," I said. "You scared the shit out of me." He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Josh?" His mouth twitched. Then he smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Daniel," he said. His voice sounded normal, but something about the cadence was off, like he was remembering how to talk. "You okay?" I asked. "You look—" "I'm fine," he interrupted. "Great, actually. Slept like the dead." He moved past me into the bathroom and closed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood in the hallway, my heart still racing. Something was wrong. I couldn't articulate what, but every instinct I had was screaming at me. I went outside to get some air. The morning was already hot, the sun beating down on the gravel parking area. The family with kids was packing up their minivan, getting ready to leave. The older couple was sitting at their picnic table, drinking coffee and reading newspapers. Everything looked normal, painfully, aggressively normal. I walked to the bathhouse to use the actual bathroom and maybe clear my head. The building was empty except for one stall with a closed door. I washed my hands and stared at myself in the industrial mirror above the sink. Same face, same eyes. But the feeling persisted. This horrible sense of displacement, like I was wearing a costume of myself. When I came out, Josh was leaning against the RV, smoking a cigarette. Josh didn't smoke. "Since when do you smoke?" I asked. He looked at the cigarette like he'd forgotten he was holding it. "Found them in the glove box. Figured I'd try one." "Your dad's cigarettes? Those have been there for 2 years." "They're fine." He took a drag and exhaled slowly, watching me. "You sleep okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "You?" "Best sleep I've had in months." He flicked ash onto the gravel. "You want to hit that trail or what?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to pack up and drive back to Salt Lake City and forget this trip ever happened. But I couldn't explain why. What would I tell him? That he smiled wrong? That my reflection blinked late? That I woke up feeling like someone else? "Sure," I said. "Let me grab some water." The Devil's Garden Trail starts about 8 miles from the RV park. We drove there in the Winnebago, Josh humming along to songs he'd never liked before. When I tried to change the radio station, he grabbed my wrist, not hard, but firm enough to make me freeze. "I like this song," he said. I pulled my hand back. "Okay, sorry." He let go and smiled that wrong smile again. "No worries, man, let's have a good day." The parking lot was crowded with tourists and serious hikers. We geared up and started down the trail. It was a beautiful day. Clear blue sky, red rock formations that looked like they belonged on another planet, air so dry it made your sinuses ache. Under normal circumstances, I would have loved it. But Josh was acting stranger with each passing minute. He walked differently, not limping or injured, but with a gait that didn't match his usual stride. He kept touching things, running his hands along rocks, pressing his palms against tree bark, crouching to pick up handfuls of dirt and let it sift through his fingers. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was getting acquainted with the place. "Acquainted?" I said. "Josh, we've been hiking together for years. You've never given a shit about getting acquainted." He stood up from examining a rock and looked at me. Really looked at me like he was memorizing my face. "Maybe I've changed," he said. We hiked for another hour. Josh kept stopping to stare at other hikers, making them uncomfortable enough that they'd hurry past us. He asked me strange questions. What year was I born? Where did I grow up? What was my mother's maiden name? Stuff he already knew. When I pointed this out, he said he was just making conversation. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. "I think we should head back," I said. "I'm not feeling great." "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Headache, altitude maybe." Josh studied me for a long moment. "You sure that's all it is?" "Yeah, why?" "You seem off." The irony wasn't lost on me. I almost laughed. "I'm fine, let's just go back." We turned around and headed for the parking lot. Josh was quiet the whole way, but I could feel him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. That afternoon back at the RV, things got worse. Josh insisted on sitting outside in the shade, claiming he wanted to observe the environment. I stayed inside, drinking water and trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe Josh was having some kind of breakdown, grief manifesting in weird ways. I should be supportive, not paranoid. Around 4 p.m., I heard voices outside. I looked through the window and saw Josh talking to the guy from the solo camper van. The guy looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Josh was standing too close to him, invading his personal space in a way that was clearly deliberate. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the conversation ended with the guy backing away and practically running to his van. Josh watched him go, then turned and looked directly at the RV window where I was standing. He waved. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding again. When Josh came inside a few minutes later, I asked him what that was about. "Just being friendly," he said. "Guy's a little jumpy, though." I asked him how long he'd been camping here, and he looked at me like I'd threatened him. "Maybe you were being weird." Josh's smile faded. "Weird how?" "I don't know. Standing too close, asking personal questions. You've been acting strange all day." He sat down across from me at the small dining table. His expression was neutral again, impossible to read. "You think I'm acting strange?" he said slowly. "Yeah, I do." "Interesting." He leaned back in his chair. "What if I told you that you're the one acting strange?" "What are you talking about?" "You've been paranoid since we woke up, looking at me like I'm a stranger, watching yourself in mirrors, acting like you don't know where you are." My mouth went dry. "That's not—" "I'm just saying," Josh interrupted. "Maybe you should consider that whatever you think is wrong with me might actually be wrong with you." He stood up and went to the bedroom, closing the door behind him. I sat there for a long time, trying to process what he'd said. Was he gaslighting me? Or was he right? I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror again. Same face, same eyes. But the feeling of wrongness was overwhelming now, like my body was a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. I thought about calling someone. But who? And what would I say? I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the fold-out couch, listening to the sounds of the RV park settling into darkness. Around midnight, I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, circling the RV. I told myself it was an animal, maybe a coyote, but the pattern was too consistent, too purposeful. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. I held my breath, waiting. After maybe 30 seconds, they moved on. I heard them fade into the distance. I got up and looked out the window. Nothing, just empty gravel and shadows. When I turned around, Josh was standing in the hallway. "Can't sleep?" he asked. I jumped so hard I nearly fell. "Fuck, Josh, stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Sneaking up on me." "I wasn't sneaking. You were just distracted." He walked to the small refrigerator and pulled out a beer. "Want one?" "No." He opened the can and took a long drink, watching me over the rim. "You sure you're okay, Daniel? You look really stressed." "I'm fine. Because if something's wrong, you can tell me. We're friends, right?" The way he said friends made my skin crawl, like he was testing the word, seeing if it fit. "Right," I said. He finished the beer in silence, crushed the can, and tossed it in the trash. "Get some sleep. We've got another long day tomorrow." He went back to the bedroom. I heard the door lock click. I didn't sleep. Friday morning, Josh suggested we skip hiking and just hang around the camp. He said he wanted to absorb the local culture, which made no sense because we were in a half-empty RV park with no culture to absorb. But I agreed because I didn't want to be alone with him on a trail again. We spent the morning sitting at the picnic table, Josh reading a Tom Clancy paperback he'd found in the RV, and me pretending to be interested in my phone. The cell service was spotty, but I managed to load Reddit and scroll mindlessly through posts I didn't actually read. Around 11 a.m., the park ranger came by again. She stopped at our site and asked if everything was okay. "Fine," Josh said before I could answer, "just enjoying the peace and quiet." She looked at me. "How about you? Everything good?" I started to say something. I don't even know what. But Josh cut me off. "He's a little altitude sick, but he'll be fine. Right, Daniel?" The ranger held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. "Okay. Well, if you need anything, the office is open until 6. After she left, Josh said, "You were about to say something stupid." "What?" To the ranger. "You were about to say something that would have caused problems." "I wasn't going to—" "Yes, you were." He closed the book and looked at me. "You need to trust me, Daniel. I know what I'm doing." "What are you doing?" He didn't answer, just went back to reading. That afternoon, the guy from the solo camper van left. I watched him pack up his stuff, throwing things into his van with the kind of frantic energy that suggested he couldn't leave fast enough. When he drove past our site, I saw his face through the windshield. He looked terrified. "Wonder what spooked him," Josh said from behind me. I turned. He was standing in the doorway of the RV, holding another cigarette. "Maybe you did," I said. "Maybe." He lit the cigarette and took a drag. Or maybe he was running from something else. "Like what?" "Like the same thing you're running from." "I'm not running from anything." Josh smiled that wrong smile. "Sure you are. You've been running since you woke up yesterday. Problem is, you can't run from yourself." He went back inside before I could respond. I need to explain something now that I've been avoiding. The memories started Friday afternoon. I was sitting in one of the camping chairs trying to distract myself with a book when I remembered something that hadn't happened to me. I remembered being 12 years old, riding a bike through a neighborhood I'd never lived in. The memory was vivid. The crack in the sidewalk that made the bike jump, the smell of honeysuckle, the sound of a dog barking from behind a chain-link fence. But it wasn't my childhood. I'd never had a bike like that. My neighborhood didn't have honeysuckle. The memory belonged to Josh. I'd heard him tell that exact story once, years ago, during a late-night conversation about childhood. He'd described that bike, that sidewalk, that barking dog, and now I could remember it as clearly as my own memories. I tried to brush it off, dismissed it as my brain misfiring. But then it happened again. I remembered a high school girlfriend I'd never had, a college roommate who wasn't mine, a camping trip with Josh's dad that I hadn't been on. Josh's memories were bleeding into my head. I looked up at the RV and saw Josh watching me from the window. He raised one hand in a slow wave. "Friday night," I confronted him. "Something happened to us," I said. "Something's wrong." We were sitting at the picnic table, the sun setting behind the red rocks in the distance. Josh had cooked instant ramen on the camp stove, and we were eating it out of paper bowls. Everything looked normal, felt normal, except it wasn't. "What do you think happened?" Josh asked calmly. "I don't know, but I'm remembering things that didn't happen to me, things that happened to you." He set down his bowl. "Like what?" I told him about the bike, the girlfriend, the camping trip with his dad. His expression didn't change. "Interesting," he said when I finished. "You want to know what I think?" "Yes. I think you're experiencing depersonalization. It's a psychological condition where you feel disconnected from yourself, common in high-stress situations or after trauma. You start misremembering things, questioning your own experiences." He said it like he was reading from a medical textbook. "You should probably see someone when we get back." "That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" I didn't have an answer. How could I explain the feeling that I wasn't myself anymore? That I'd woken up in the wrong body? That Josh was acting like a stranger wearing my best friend's face? I want to leave, I said. Tomorrow morning. I want to pack up and go home. Josh considered this. If that's what you need, we can do that, but I think you're making a mistake. Why? Because running won't change anything. You'll still be you when we get back. Or whoever you think you are. That night I locked myself in the bathroom with my phone and tried to call my mom. No service. I tried to connect to the park's Wi-Fi. Too weak. I was isolated. I looked at myself in the mirror again. This time I didn't recognize the face staring back at all. Saturday morning, Josh was gone. I woke up around dawn and found the RV empty. The bedroom door was open, the bed made. Josh's shoes were gone, but everything else, his clothes, his wallet, his phone, was still there. I went outside. The camp was quiet. The older couple's Airstream was gone. The family had never come back. We were the only ones left in this section of the park. I walked around calling Josh's name. No answer. I checked the bathhouse. Empty. I walked down the gravel road toward the park entrance, looking for any sign of him. That's when I saw the footprints. They started at our RV and led into the desert, past the boundary of the campground. Bare footprints. Josh's shoes were in the dirt next to the RV, neatly placed side by side. I followed the footprints for maybe a quarter mile before they disappeared into a rocky area. I called his name again. Nothing. I stood there in the rising heat trying to figure out what to do. Go back to the RV and wait? Follow the tracks as far as I could? Call the ranger? That's when I heard it. A voice. My voice. Coming from somewhere in the rocks ahead. Daniel, it called. Come find me. I ran. I don't know why. Every survival instinct told me to turn around, to get back to the RV, to drive away and never look back. But I ran toward the voice. I found him. Found me. Standing in a small canyon, naked, covered in dirt and blood. It was my body. My face. My exact height and build. But it was Josh's eyes staring out at me. There you are, he said with my voice. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stood there staring at myself. It's disorienting, isn't it? He continued. Waking up in someone else's skin. I felt the same way when I woke up in yours. What did you do? I finally managed. I didn't do anything. This just happened, Thursday night while we slept. I woke up in your body and you woke up in mine. He looked down at himself. At my body. I have to say, you don't take very good care of yourself. This shoulder's been bothering me since yesterday. I had a bad shoulder, an old injury from a car accident. He was right. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I wanted to see if you'd figure it out, and honestly, you're not very observant. I've been living your life for 2 days and you only just realized something was wrong. We need to fix this. We need to... Fix it? He laughed. My laugh, but wrong. Why would we fix it? I like your life better. Your apartment is nicer. Your job is better. Even your memories are better. No dead dad. No ex-girlfriend who cheated. Just boring, stable Daniel King. You can't just... I already did. And you know what? I think I'll keep it. He started walking toward me. I backed away. Don't worry, he said. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to let you walk away. Live your life as Josh. Deal with all the shit I've been dealing with. Seems fair, doesn't it? No one will believe you're me. They already do. I've been you for 2 days and no one noticed. Not the ranger, not the other campers, not even you, until it was too late. He smiled. My smile. You, though, you're going to have a harder time. You can't even stand to look in a mirror without freaking out. He was right, I could feel it, and the wrongness of this body. The memories that weren't mine fighting with the ones that were. I was coming apart at the seams. Please, I said. We can figure this out. We can... Goodbye, Josh. He walked past me, back toward the campground. I stood there, frozen. watching myself disappear into the distance. I don't know how long I stayed in that canyon. Hours, maybe. The sun climbed higher, and the heat became unbearable. Eventually, I forced myself to move. When I got back to the RV, it was gone. Josh, wearing my body, living my life, had packed up and left. I was alone. The park ranger found me that evening, wandering the empty campsites. She called the police. I tried to explain what happened, but the words came out wrong. I said I was Josh. She looked at me like I was crazy. She said Daniel King had reported his friend Josh missing earlier that day, said Josh had been acting erratically and had wandered off into the desert. They searched for a day before calling it off. They found the footprints, the blood on the rocks. They found evidence that someone had spent the night out there. They assumed I'd had a breakdown, hurt myself, eventually found my way back. They called Josh's mom. She didn't recognize me. Of course she didn't. I was in her son's body, but I couldn't answer questions about his childhood correctly because they were my memories, not his. Daniel King, the one who looks like me but isn't, came to the police station. He cried when he saw me, said he hoped I'd get help, said he forgave me for whatever was happening in my head. Everyone believed him. I've been living in motels for 3 weeks now. Josh's bank account is almost empty. I tried to go to my apartment, Daniel's apartment, but Josh had changed the locks. I tried to call my mom, but when she answered and I said, "Mom, it's me," she said, "Daniel already called me this morning. Who is this?" I hung up. I've started having Josh's memories all the time now. They're crowding out my own. I can't remember my first dog's name. I can't remember my college major. But I can remember Josh's 8th birthday party in perfect detail. I can remember his first kiss, his dad's funeral. I'm forgetting how to be Daniel King because I'm not Daniel King anymore. I'm Josh. This body, these hands, this face in the mirror, they're mine now. I tried to find Josh, find myself, online. His social media is updated regularly. Pictures of him hiking, eating at restaurants I used to love, hanging out with my friends. Everyone comments about how happy he looks lately, how he's really come into his own. He's living my life better than I ever did. Last night I dreamed I was riding a bike through a neighborhood with honeysuckle and a barking dog. When I woke up, I couldn't remember which body I'd been in. I'm writing this down because I need to remember who I was, who I am. But it's getting harder. Today I looked in the mirror and didn't feel wrong anymore. I saw Josh's face and it felt like mine. The memories are mostly his now. I can barely remember being Daniel at all. Tomorrow I think I'll call Josh's mom, tell her I'm doing better, that I'm sorry for worrying her. Maybe I'll go back to Salt Lake City, try to piece together Josh's life. It's mine now, after all. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if Josh ever thinks about me, if he ever regrets taking my life, if he ever looks in the mirror and feels that wrongness, that sense that he's wearing someone else's skin. But I doubt it. He was always better at adapting than I was. My name is Josh. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost sure. I need to be sure. I need to remember. But it's so hard to hold on to something that's slipping away, like water through fingers, like memories that don't belong to you, like waking up in someone else's body and trying to find your way back home. Except there is no way back. There's only forward. And I don't know who's walking anymore. Story 4. My name is Nathan Evans. This happened last August at Fish Lake National Forest in Utah, and I still can't explain what we saw or what it meant. I'm writing this down because my therapist said it might help, but honestly, I think some things are better left alone. We'd been planning the trip for months. Me, my girlfriend Jessica, and our friends Marcus and his wife Amy. Marcus worked in my department at the accounting firm, and we'd gotten close over the past year. The 4 of us had this idea about disconnecting from everything, spending a week in the woods with our RVs, no cell service, just hiking and campfires and forgetting about quarterly reports for a while. Jessica found the spot online, some obscure camping area in Fish Lake, away from the main tourist routes. The reviews were sparse but positive. Quiet, one person wrote. Peaceful, said another. The last review was from 2019, which should have been a red flag, but we were excited about the seclusion. We left Salt Lake City on a Saturday morning, 2 RVs trailing behind our trucks. Mine was a 2015 Winnebago I'd bought used 3 years ago. Marcus had rented a newer model, something with better heating and a full bathroom. The drive took about 3 hours, the last 40 minutes on increasingly rough dirt roads that made Jessica grip the handle above her door. "You sure this is the right way?" she asked, checking her phone for the 100th time. No signal since we'd turned off the highway. "GPS says another mile," I said, though the blue dot on my screen had frozen 10 minutes ago. The campsite appeared suddenly, a small clearing surrounded by aspens and pines. There were old fire rings scattered around, rusty and overgrown, and a single picnic table that looked like it hadn't been used in years. No other campers, no ranger station nearby, just us and the trees. "Well," Marcus said, climbing out of his truck, "it's definitely secluded." We spent the first few hours setting up. The RVs faced each other across the clearing, about 30 feet apart. Marcus got his leveled first. He always was better with technical stuff. I struggled with mine until he came over to help. "Your back left is sitting on a rock," he said, pointing. I moved the RV forward 6 inches and we tried again. Better, but still not quite right. We went through this 3 more times before it felt level enough. By then it was late afternoon. Amy suggested we hike before dinner, get a sense of the trails. There was a path leading north from the campsite, barely visible through the undergrowth. We followed it for about 40 minutes, not talking much, just walking. The forest was quiet. Not peaceful quiet, just quiet. I remember thinking that I hadn't heard any birds since we arrived. When we got back to camp, the sun was starting to set. That's when Jessica noticed it first. "Did you move the chairs?" she asked me. We'd left our camping chairs in a rough semicircle near the fire ring. Now they were arranged differently. Not drastically, just rotated slightly, facing outward instead of toward each other. "Must have been the wind," I said, though there hadn't been any wind. "They're heavy chairs," she said. "And look, they're in a pattern." She was right. The 6 chairs, 3 from each RV, were now positioned in a perfect hexagon around the fire ring, each one exactly the same distance from the center. Marcus laughed. "Come on, we probably arranged them like that and forgot." "I specifically remember putting them how we always do," Jessica said. She looked at Amy. "You remember, right?" Amy shrugged. I wasn't paying attention. We rearranged the chairs back to normal and started dinner. Burgers on the camp stove, nothing fancy. We ate and talked about work, about the election coming up, about Marcus and Amy's plans to buy a house. Normal stuff. The conversation felt forced, though, like we were all trying to ignore something. That night I couldn't sleep. The RV was stuffy despite the open windows, and Jessica kept tossing beside me. Around 2 a.m. I got up to use the bathroom. Through the small window above the sink, I could see Marcus's RV across the clearing, all its lights off. Our camping chairs were still where we'd left them. I went back to bed. In the morning, the chairs had moved again. This time they weren't in a hexagon. They were arranged in 2 parallel lines, 3 chairs in each line, all facing the path we'd hiked the day before, like they were waiting for something to come down that trail. "Okay," Marcus said, staring at them. "That's weird." "Someone's messing with us," Amy said. "Has to be." "Who?" I asked. "We haven't seen anyone else. Maybe someone's camping nearby and we didn't notice," Jessica suggested. "Or it's rangers checking on us." "At night?" Marcus said. "By rearranging our furniture?" We looked around the clearing. The forest pressed in on all sides, dense and silent. No movement, no sounds. If someone else was out there, they were good at staying hidden. "Let's check the trail," I said. We walked north again, moving slowly, looking for any signs of other campers, footprints, trash, tent stakes, anything. We found nothing. The trail was empty, the forest undisturbed. After an hour, we turned back. The chairs hadn't moved while we were gone. We left them in their 2 parallel lines and tried to pretend everything was normal. We played cards in Marcus's RV, drank beer, told stories. But none of us were really present. We kept glancing out the windows. "I want to set up my phone to record tonight," Jessica said around dinner time. Pointed at the chairs. "Battery won't last," I said, "so I'll charge it in the RV. The extension cord won't reach that far." She looked at me. "Then I'll sit in the window and watch." "All night?" "If I have to." Marcus cleared his throat. "Let's not get paranoid. It's probably animals. Raccoons or something." "Raccoons don't arrange chairs in geometric patterns," Amy said quietly. We ate dinner in silence after that. That night I did sleep, but not well. I had dreams about the chairs, about them moving on their own while I watched, rotating slowly like clock hands. In the dream, they were counting something, measuring time or distance or something else I couldn't name. I woke up at dawn. Jessica was already awake, sitting by the window. "They moved," she said. I climbed out of bed and looked. The chairs were now in a circle again, but larger than before, encompassing most of the clearing. And in the center of the circle, arranged on the ground, were our camping supplies. The cooler, the lantern, the bag of charcoal, the folding table, all laid out in a neat spiral pattern. "Jesus," I said. We went outside. Marcus and Amy emerged from their RV at the same time. We stood there in our pajamas, staring at the arrangement. "This is too much," Amy said. "We should leave." "And go where?" Marcus asked. "It's a 3-hour drive back to civilization." "I don't care. This isn't normal. Let's just move everything back," I said. "Set up a watch schedule tonight, 2 people awake at all times." We spent the morning reorganizing. Everything went back where it belonged. The supplies in their proper places, the chairs in their semicircle. We felt better having a plan. Watches. Marcus and Amy would take 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Jessica and I would take 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. We hiked again in the afternoon, a different trail this time, heading west. The forest looked the same in every direction. Aspens and pines, rocky soil, occasional clearings. We saw a deer around 3 p.m., standing motionless about 50 yards away. It watched us for a full minute before walking slowly out of sight. No sounds, no birds, no insects, no wind in the trees. "Anyone else notice how quiet it is?" Jessica asked. "Mountain air," Marcus said. "It's always quiet up here." "Not like this." We got back to camp around 5 p.m. Everything was still where we'd left it. We made dinner, played cards again, waited for darkness. Marcus set up his camping lantern in the center of the clearing to illuminate the whole area. We could see the chairs, the fire ring, the RVs. At 10 p.m., Marcus and Amy started their watch. Jessica and I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the silence, waiting for sounds that never came. No footsteps, no rustling, nothing. Just the occasional murmur of Marcus and Amy talking quietly outside. At 2 a.m., they woke us up. "Nothing happened," Marcus said. "Absolutely nothing. No movement at all." Jessica and I took our position in camping chairs near the fire ring. We had flashlights, a thermos of coffee, and a clear view of everything. The lantern was still burning in the center of the clearing. For the first hour, nothing happened. We sat and watched and drank coffee. The forest remained perfectly still. Around 3:15 a.m., Jessica grabbed my arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "What?" "By Marcus's RV. Something moved." I looked. The RV sat dark and quiet. I didn't see anything. "Maybe they got up to use the bathroom," I said. "No, it was outside, like a shadow moving past the window." We both stared at the RV. No movement, no lights, nothing. "Should we wake them?" Jessica asked. "And say what? That you saw a shadow?" We kept watching. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. Then, at exactly 3:30 a.m., I remember checking my watch. One of the camping chairs scraped across the dirt. Just one, the chair furthest from us, moving 6 inches to the left. Jessica made a sound in her throat. I stood up, shining my flashlight at the chair. It sat there, innocent, empty. "Did you see that?" I said. "Yes." "What do we do?" "I don't know." We approached the chair slowly. I expected to find a string attached to it or a stick someone had used to push it, or some rational explanation. There was nothing. The chair sat on bare dirt, no marks around it, no signs of disturbance. "Check the woods," Jessica said. I swept my flashlight across the tree line. Darkness, trees, more darkness. If someone was out there watching us, they were invisible. Another chair scraped, this time one near the fire ring, moving to form a new angle. "Nathan," Jessica said, her voice tight. A third chair moved, then a fourth. Not all at once. They moved in sequence, one after another, like dominoes falling. Each one repositioning itself, scraping across the dirt with that horrible grating sound. They were forming something new, a shape I didn't recognize. "Wake Marcus," I shouted. Jessica ran to their RV, pounding on the door. I stood in the clearing, watching the chairs continue their arrangement. 5 chairs now, 6, all of them finding new positions. The pattern was deliberate but meaningless. Not a circle, not lines, just specific points in space like they were marking coordinates. Marcus burst out of his RV in his boxers, Amy right behind him. "What's happening?" "The chairs," I said, "they're moving." As he watched, the last chair scraped into position. Then everything stopped. 6 chairs arranged in a pattern that looked random but couldn't be, sitting there in the lantern light. "What the fuck?" Marcus breathed. We stood there, the 4 of us, staring at the chairs. None of us wanted to admit what we'd seen because admitting it meant accepting something we couldn't explain. "We're leaving," Amy said. "Right now. Pack up the RVs. We're leaving." "It's 3:30 in the morning," Marcus said. "I don't care. We can't navigate those dirt roads in the dark. We'll drive off a cliff. Then we leave at first light." Nobody argued with her. We sat together in Marcus's RV, all the lights on, doors locked, windows closed. Nobody slept. We just waited for dawn, jumping at every small sound. The sun finally rose around 6 a.m. We went outside cautiously. The chairs were still in their strange pattern, and arranged around them, spread across the clearing in careful formations, were all of our supplies again. The cooler, the lantern, our backpacks, Jessica's hiking boots, Marcus's fishing gear, everything we'd brought, laid out in concentric circles around the chairs. "Okay," I said. "Okay. We pack up now and we leave." It took us 90 minutes to break down the camps, load the RVs, secure everything. We moved quickly, not talking much. Amy kept looking over her shoulder at the forest. I noticed her hands were shaking. When we were finally ready to go, we did one last check of the site. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. Carved into the ground around each chair, barely visible in the dirt, were symbols. Not letters, not numbers, just geometric shapes. Triangles, circles, intersecting lines. They'd been there all along, we just hadn't seen them. "Don't touch them," Jessica said when I bent down to look closer. "I'm not. Just get in the RV. Let's go." We left the clearing in convoy, my RV leading, Marcus following. The dirt road seemed longer than I remembered, rougher. Branches scraped the sides of both vehicles. I kept checking my rearview mirror, making sure Marcus was still behind me. After 20 minutes, I realized we should have reached the main road by now. The GPS on my phone was useless without signal, but I'd made careful note of landmarks on the way in. A distinctive boulder, a dead tree shaped like a fork, a place where the road split. I should have seen them by now. I slowed down, looking for anything familiar. Nothing. This wasn't the road we'd driven in on. Marcus pulled up beside me when I stopped. We both rolled down our windows. "This isn't right," he said. "I know." "Where are we?" "I don't know." We drove on. The road kept going, winding through the forest, never reaching the highway. After another 30 minutes, I started recognizing landmarks, but from the wrong direction. We were heading back toward the campsite. "No," Jessica said. "No, no, no." I tried turning around, but the road was too narrow. I kept driving, looking for a wider spot. The road curved, dipped, rose, and then we were back in the clearing. Our camping chairs were still there, still in their pattern. Our supplies were still arranged around them, like we'd never left. Marcus got out of his RV, walked to the center of the clearing, and screamed. Just let it out. One long howl of frustration and fear. Then he walked back to his RV without saying anything. We tried leaving again, 3 more times that day. Each time the road led us back to the clearing. Different routes, same result. The forest was a maze, and we were trapped in its center. By nightfall, we were exhausted and terrified. We hadn't eaten since breakfast. We set up camp again, barely speaking, and made dinner from what was left in the coolers. Nobody suggested keeping watch this time. What was the point? "There has to be a pattern," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "The chairs, the supplies, the symbols, it's trying to tell us something." "Or it's just fucking with us," Amy said. "But why?" "Because that's what it does." I looked at Jessica. She was staring at the chairs, her expression blank. "What if we arrange them back?" she said. "Put everything how it was when we arrived." "You think that'll help?" "I don't know, but we have to try something." So we did. We moved the chairs back to their original positions, that casual semicircle we'd first set them in. We put the supplies away, cleaned up the site, tried to recreate that first afternoon before anything weird had started. It took an hour. When we finished, the clearing looked normal again, almost like those first few hours had been. "Now what?" Marcus asked. "Now we wait," I said. We stayed up that night, all 4 of us, sitting in our original semicircle, watching the darkness beyond the fire. Nothing happened. No movement, no sounds. The chairs stayed where we'd put them. At dawn, we tried leaving again. This time the road worked. We found the highway, followed it back to civilization, and drove straight home without stopping except for gas. We never talked about what happened. Marcus quit the accounting firm 2 weeks later and moved to Denver. Amy called Jessica once to see how we were doing, but the conversation was awkward and brief. We never saw them again. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. About a month after we got back, I was unpacking some boxes in the garage and I found a photo from the trip. Jessica had taken it on that first afternoon before the chairs started moving. In the photo, the 4 of us were smiling, standing in front of the RVs. Behind us, arranged in the background, were the camping chairs. They were already in that hexagon pattern. I showed Jessica the photo. She stared at it for a long time, then said, "We should have checked what the symbols meant." "What?" "The marks in the dirt, the geometric shapes. Someone arranged those a long time ago. We weren't the first people to camp there." "So what were the symbols?" "I don't know, but I think they were instructions." I burned the photo that night. I don't know why. It felt important to destroy it, like keeping it would mean accepting something I wasn't ready to accept. Last week I got an email from Marcus. No subject line, no message, just an attachment. I knew I shouldn't open it, but I did. It was a photo of a different campsite, somewhere in Colorado, based on the mountains in the background, and in the foreground, arranged in that same hexagon pattern, were 6 camping chairs. I haven't responded. I don't know what I would say. Jessica and I don't go camping anymore. We don't talk about Fish Lake National Forest. Most days I can almost pretend it didn't happen. But sometimes I wake up at 3:30 a.m. exactly, and I swear I can hear the sound of chairs scraping across dirt, arranging themselves into patterns I'll never understand. And I think about those symbols carved into the ground, those geometric shapes we saw but never studied. Jessica was right. They were instructions. Some kind of language, or diagram, or map. But for what? And meant for who? I don't think we were being tested. I think we were being measured, positioned, arranged into our proper places in some pattern we couldn't see. And the worst part, The thing that terrifies me most is this. When I look at my life now, at how Jessica and I interact, at our daily routines and habits, and the way we move through our apartment, I can see a pattern forming. The way we position ourselves in rooms, the way we arrange our furniture, the way we unconsciously organize our space. It's always hexagonal. We're still being arranged. Even now, months later, hundreds of miles away, something in that clearing recognized us, measured us, and assigned us our positions. And every day, without thinking about it, we move into formation. Last night I woke up and found Jessica standing in the living room at 3:30 a.m. She was rotating slowly like she was looking for something, turning in precise increments. When I asked what she was doing, she looked at me with eyes that seemed too focused and said, "Finding my place." This morning I checked our furniture arrangement. The couch, the chairs, the coffee table. They'd moved during the night, just a little. But enough to notice if you were looking. They're forming a hexagon. I think whatever marked us in that clearing is still here. Not as a presence, but as a pattern. A set of instructions written into us at some fundamental level. We're being arranged, piece by piece, into something bigger that we can't see. And someday, when we're in exactly the right positions, something is going to happen. I don't know what. But I know I'm supposed to be part of it. The chairs knew first. They moved because they understood. And now we move too, finding our places, rotating into position. I wonder who else is out there, in different cities and different states, arranging themselves without knowing why. How many people camped at that clearing before us? How many after? Are we all connected now, all moving in synchronization, all finding our assigned positions in some vast geometric pattern that spans the country? I have nightmares about seeing it from above. Millions of people standing in their homes and offices and cars, each one a point in space, each one carefully positioned. And when I zoom out far enough, all those points connect. Lines between us forming shapes, forming symbols, forming that same language we saw carved in the dirt. What happens when the pattern completes itself? When every person is in their proper place and the geometry resolves into its final form? I don't want to know, but I think I'm going to find out. We all are. Because the arrangement isn't finished yet. It's still building, still growing, still pulling us into alignment. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. We can only move where we're meant to move, arrange ourselves as we're meant to be arranged, and wait for whatever comes next. The chairs were just the beginning. They were showing us how it works, how we all fit together, how every position matters. I measured the angles in our apartment yesterday. The furniture, the doorways, our sleeping positions on the bed. They're all precise, mathematically perfect. Exactly 60 degrees between each major element. A hexagon has 6 sides, 6 points, 6 angles of exactly 60 degrees. There are 6 billion people on Earth. I think about that sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. I think about what shape we're all forming together, all of us moving into place. What will it look like when it's complete? What will it summon or open or become? And I think about that clearing in Fish Lake National Forest, still waiting there in the woods, still measuring new visitors, still teaching them the pattern, still adding pieces to something too large to comprehend. The chairs are empty now, but not for long. There's always someone driving up that dirt road, looking for a quiet place to camp. And when they arrive, they'll arrange their chairs without thinking about it. They'll position themselves just right. They'll take their place in the pattern, just like we did, just like everyone does. I should stop writing this. Jessica's calling me from the bedroom. She says she needs help moving the furniture. She says it doesn't feel right where it is. She says she knows exactly where everything should go. I'm going to help her. I can feel it too now. That pull, that certainty. I know where everything belongs. I can see the pattern so clearly. We're almost in position, almost ready. Whatever's been arranging us is patient. It's been doing this for a long time, maybe forever. And soon, very soon, we'll all be exactly where we need to be. The geometry will be complete, and then, Story 5. My name is Madison Lewis. I'm writing this in a motel room outside Pikeville, Kentucky. 3 days after we left the holler. My hands are shaking, and I keep checking the door to make sure it's locked. I need to get this down while I still remember everything clearly, before my brain starts filling in the gaps or smoothing over the parts that don't make sense. We went to Daniel Boone National Forest in late September, me and my husband Trevor, along with our friends Cassie and her boyfriend Marcus. Trevor had been talking about this RV trip for months. He'd found this campsite online, some remote spot deep in the forest where you could park for cheap and not have to deal with crowds or restrictions. Real camping, he called it. Not that sanitized state park bullshit. Trevor works in IT and spends 60 hours a week in front of screens. He gets these ideas about disconnecting, about getting back to nature, and then 3 days into any trip he's complaining about the bugs and missing his Xbox. But he was insistent about this one. He'd even rented a decent-sized RV, something I knew we couldn't really afford, but he said it was worth it for the experience. Cassie works with me at the insurance agency. She's one of those people who's always game for anything, which is probably why she ended up with Marcus, who's the exact opposite of Trevor. Marcus is outdoorsy, quiet, the kind of guy who actually knows how to start a fire without matches and can identify trees by their bark. He seemed excited about the location when Trevor showed us the coordinates, but I noticed he got quiet when Trevor mentioned the name. Redbird Holler, Trevor had said, pointing at his laptop screen. Look at this place. No light pollution, completely off the grid. There's a spring for fresh water, fire pits already set up. And get this, it's free. Just some local family that lets people camp on their land as long as you follow their rules. What rules? Cassie had asked. Trevor waved his hand. Basic stuff. No littering, no loud music after 9. Stay on the marked paths. Common sense. Marcus had frowned at the screen. Redbird Holler. You sure about this? Why wouldn't I be? People around here don't talk much about that area. There's a reason it's free. What, is it haunted? Trevor laughed. Come on, man. It's just a spot in the woods. Marcus had shrugged, but he'd kept frowning. Just saying, if locals avoid a place, maybe there's a reason. I should have paid more attention to that conversation. I should have asked more questions, but I was tired from work and Trevor had already paid for the RV rental, and Cassie was excited, and I just wanted a few days away from phones and emails and the constant noise of everyday life. We left on a Thursday morning, September 24th. The drive took about 6 hours, getting progressively more rural as we went. Trevor was following GPS coordinates rather than an actual address, and after we left the main highway, the roads got narrower and rougher. The RV handled it okay, but I could tell Trevor was getting nervous about scratching the paint on the low-hanging branches. The last town we passed through was called Confluence. Population maybe 300. The kind of place where everyone stops what they're doing to watch strangers drive through. We stopped at a gas station to fill up and use the bathroom, and that's when we got our first real warning. The woman behind the counter was probably 60, weathered in the way people get when they spend their whole lives in one hard place. She looked at Trevor's credit card, then at the RV through the window, then back at Trevor. You folks lost? No, ma'am, Trevor said, too cheerful. We're heading up to Redbird Holler, going camping for the weekend. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. That right. You know it? I know it. She handed back his card. You folks ought to turn around. Cassie laughed nervously. Is it that bad? The woman looked at each of us in turn, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach at her expression. It ain't about bad or good. The holler don't like outsiders. Never has. Well, we're not going to bother anyone, Trevor said. We're just going to camp, do some hiking, and leave. We'll follow all the rules. Rules? The woman almost smiled. You know whose rules you're following? The property owners, I guess. The website said, website. She shook her head. You listen to me. Whatever that website told you, it's a lie. Ain't nobody owns that holler except the holler itself. And if you're smart, you'll fill up your tank and head back the way you came. Marcus spoke up then, his voice quiet. What happens if we don't? The woman turned to him, and I saw something like respect in her face. Most folk who go up there come back fine, shaken maybe. A little different, but they come back. She paused. Some don't. Don't come back? I heard myself ask. Don't come back the same. We stood there in silence for a moment. Trevor broke it with a forced laugh. Thanks for the warning, ma'am. We'll be careful. Outside, loading back into the RV, Cassie grabbed my arm. Mad, I don't like this. That woman wasn't joking around. I know. So maybe we should listen to her. We could find another campsite somewhere closer to town, somewhere that actual people go. Guys, come on. Trevor was already in the driver's seat. It's local color. Every small town has stories about the spooky woods. It's part of the charm. Besides, we drove 6 hours to get here. We're not turning back because some old lady tried to spook us. Marcus climbed into the passenger seat without saying anything, but I caught his expression in the side mirror. He looked troubled. The road to Redbird Holler wasn't marked. We had to follow the GPS down a dirt track that wound through increasingly dense forest. The trees here were old, the kind that form a canopy so thick that even in daylight it felt like dusk. The RV bounced and creaked over ruts and rocks, and twice Trevor had to back up and try a different route when the path got too narrow. It took almost an hour of driving at 5 miles an hour before we reached the campsite. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. We'd been hearing birds and insects through the open windows during the drive, but as soon as Trevor shut off the engine, the silence dropped like a blanket. Not peaceful silence, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. The second thing I noticed were the markers. They were everywhere, nailed to trees at roughly head height, circling the clearing where we'd parked. Small wooden plaques, each carved with the same symbol, a circle with a vertical line through it and 2 curved lines on either side that might have been wings or branches or something else entirely. Those are new, Marcus said, climbing out to look at one. New? Cassie asked. I mean, the wood's old, but they're freshly carved. You can still smell the sap. Trevor was already setting up, extending the RV's awning, checking the levels. They're probably property markers, letting us know where we can camp. But Marcus was shaking his head, running his finger along the carved lines. This isn't a property marker. This is a warning symbol. A warning about what? I asked. I don't know, but I've seen similar markings before in Appalachian folklore. They usually mean something like protected area or keep out or... He stopped. Or what? Or already claimed. Trevor laughed, but it sounded hollow. Claimed by who? Bigfoot? By whatever lives here. Jesus Christ, Marcus, you're being dramatic. It's probably just the family that owns this land, marking their territory. Rural people do stuff like that all the time. I wanted to believe Trevor. I wanted to laugh it off and start unpacking and enjoy the trip we'd driven 6 hours for. But something about those markers made my skin crawl. They were all facing inward, toward the clearing, like they were watching us rather than marking boundaries. The campsite itself was nice enough. The clearing was about 40 feet across with a fire pit ringed with stones in the center, a picnic table that had seen better days, and what looked like an old outhouse at the far end. The spring Marcus had mentioned was visible through the trees, a clear pool fed by water trickling down a rock face. Everything was tidy in an unsettling way. No trash, no undergrowth, like someone maintained it regularly but hadn't been here recently. We spent the rest of the afternoon setting up camp. Trevor got the RV leveled and the hookups sorted, though there was obviously no electricity or water connection this far out. Cassie and I organized the supplies while Marcus scouted around the perimeter. He came back looking even more troubled. Find something? I asked. More markers. They go all the way around, maybe 50 yards out, and there are paths leading away from the clearing, but they're marked too, like really marked. Every 10 feet there's another symbol, so we stay on the paths, Trevor said. Sounds smart anyway, don't want to get lost. Trevor, I really think we should consider leaving. And go where? It took us an hour to get here. It'll be dark soon, and we paid for this RV. We're staying at least one night. If anyone feels weird about it in the morning, we'll pack up and find somewhere else. That settled it, sort of. We made dinner on the propane stove. Nothing fancy, just burgers and chips. As the sun set, the temperature dropped fast. By the time we had the fire going, I was grateful for my jacket. The first night was when things started feeling wrong. We were sitting around the fire, drinking beers and trying to relax, when the noises started. Not animal noises exactly, but not quite human either. Clicking sounds like someone cracking their knuckles or tapping sticks together, coming from different directions, sometimes close, sometimes far away, but constant, a rhythm without pattern. Probably just the forest settling, Trevor said, but his voice was tight. Trees don't click, Marcus said, so it's an animal, a raccoon or something. I've heard plenty of raccoons. That's not a raccoon. The clicking continued for about 20 minutes, then stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I found myself straining to hear anything, wind, insects, a bird, but there was nothing. Just the crackle of our fire and our own breathing. I'm going to bed, Cassie announced abruptly. Anyone else? We all agreed, maybe too quickly. The RV felt small with all four of us in it, but it felt safer than being outside. Trevor and I took the bed in the back, Cassie and Marcus the converted dinette. I lay there listening to Trevor's breathing even out as he fell asleep, but I couldn't relax. The darkness outside the windows felt thick, present, like something I could touch. Around midnight I heard footsteps, not the clicking sounds from earlier, but distinct footsteps circling the RV. Slow, deliberate, the sound of feet on dry leaves. They went around once, twice, 3 times. I held my breath, waiting for them to stop, waiting to hear knocking on the door or see a face in the window. But they just continued their circuit over and over. I thought about waking Trevor, but what would I say? Someone's walking around outside. He'd tell me it was an animal, or he'd go out there himself to check, and I didn't want him opening that door. Eventually, the footsteps stopped. I must have fallen asleep sometime after that, because the next thing I knew, Trevor was shaking my shoulder. Madison. Wake up. What time is it? 6. I need you to look at something. His voice had an edge that brought me fully awake. I followed him outside, where Marcus and Cassie were already standing in their pajamas, staring at the ground around the RV. The footsteps I'd heard during the night had left prints in the dirt. Perfect prints, too perfect, like someone had placed their feet carefully in the same spots over and over. But the prints themselves were wrong. The toes were too long, the heel too narrow, and there seemed to be an extra joint in the foot, creating a bend where none should be. What the hell is that? Cassie whispered. I don't know, Marcus said, kneeling to examine them more closely. I've never seen tracks like this. Could it be a bear? Trevor asked, but even he sounded doubtful. Bears don't walk in circles around RVs, and these look almost human, just distorted. I counted the circuits. The prints went around the RV exactly 7 times before stopping at the fire pit. We're leaving, I said. Right now. Pack everything up, and we're leaving. Agreed, Cassie said immediately, but Trevor was staring at the RV. We can't. What do you mean we can't? He pointed. I followed his finger and felt my stomach drop. All 4 tires were flat, not just flat, slashed with clean cuts that looked deliberate. The spare's only 1 tire, Trevor said, his voice hollow. We can't drive anywhere. Marcus was already pulling out his phone. I'll call for help. Someone can come get us, or at least bring tires. He stopped, looking at his screen. No signal. We all checked our phones. Nothing. Not even the trace of a single bar. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Okay. We hike back to the road, flag someone down, get help. It's only a few miles. An hour on that terrain, Marcus said. Maybe more. So we start now. Trevor was looking at the markers around the clearing, and his face had gone pale. Did those change? We turned to look. The symbols on the markers were different from yesterday, where before they'd been simple lines and circles. Now they were more elaborate. The same basic design, but with additions. Smaller marks around the edges, patterns I couldn't read but that made something in my brain itch when I tried to focus on them. They were different yesterday, Cassie said. I'm sure of it. I remember because I took a picture. She pulled out her phone, swiped through her photos, then froze. It's gone. The photo's gone. I took like 10 pictures yesterday setting up camp and they're all gone. I checked my phone. Same thing. All the photos from yesterday had vanished, leaving a gap in my camera roll between the gas station in Confluence and this morning. That's a phone glitch, Trevor said, but he didn't sound convinced. Listen, let's just pack up what we need and hike out. We'll come back with help and figure out the RV situation later. It seemed like a plan, at least. We went inside and packed backpacks with water, food, and supplies. I was stuffing my jacket into my bag when I noticed something on the table, a piece of paper that hadn't been there before, with words written in careful block letters. You must complete your stay. Trevor, look at this. He came over, read it, and went even paler. I didn't write that. None of us wrote it. It just appeared. That's not possible. Look at it. Someone was inside the RV last night. Marcus picked up the paper carefully as if it might burn him. The handwriting's weird. Look at the letters. They're too perfect, like someone was copying an alphabet they don't actually know. Who gives a shit about the handwriting? Cassie's voice was rising. Someone broke in while we were sleeping and left us a note. We're leaving. Now. We grabbed our packs and headed for the trail we'd come in on. The morning was bright, warmer than yesterday, but the forest still felt wrong, too quiet, too still. The symbols on the trees seemed to multiply as we walked, no longer just marking the clearing but appearing every few feet along the path. We'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes when Marcus stopped. This isn't right. What do you mean? Trevor asked. We should have reached the fork by now, where the path split to go around that big boulder. We passed it on the way in. Maybe we're just not as far as we think. No. Marcus pointed ahead. Look. Through the trees I could see the clearing, our RV, the fire pit. We'd walked in a complete circle. That's not possible, Trevor said. We followed the path. We didn't turn around. We should be halfway to the road by now. Let's try again, I said. Maybe we accidentally took a wrong turn. We tried again, and again. Each time after about 10 minutes of walking, we'd find ourselves back at the clearing. Different approaches, same result. The paths curved in ways that shouldn't have worked, turning what should have been straight lines into loops that brought us back to where we started. On the fourth attempt, Marcus stopped marking trees with his knife so we could track our route. We followed his marks and watched them lead us in a spiral back to the clearing. The forest is moving, Cassie said quietly, or changing, or something. The paths aren't staying put. That's impossible, Trevor said automatically, but he sounded defeated. Then explain it. Explain how we keep ending up back here. We stood there in the clearing, the afternoon sun starting to slant through the trees, and I felt the full weight of our situation settle over me. We couldn't leave. We couldn't call for help. We were stuck in this place, and something wanted us here. The note had said we had to complete our stay, but it hadn't said how long that stay was supposed to be. That second night was worse. We sat around the fire again because none of us could stand being inside the RV. The clicking sounds returned, louder this time, and closer. Sometimes I thought I saw movement at the edge of the firelight, shapes that were almost human but not quite, watching from between the trees. Marcus had been quiet all day, and now he finally spoke up. I asked around before we left about this area. I didn't tell you guys because I didn't want to freak anyone out, but now I think you need to know. Know what? I asked. Red Bird Holler has a history. Back in the 1960s, there was a family living up here, the Kendricks. They had a daughter who went missing in the woods. They searched for weeks but never found her. The father went a little crazy after that, started carving symbols into trees all around their property. Protective symbols, he called them, though nobody knew what he was protecting against. What happened to the family? Cassie asked. They disappeared, all of them. The house was found empty one morning, food still on the table, like they'd just stepped out for a minute. Nobody's lived here since. And you didn't think this was worth mentioning before we drove 6 hours into the middle of nowhere? Trevor's voice was tight. I thought it was just a story. Every place like this has stories. Stories don't slash tires, I said. Stories don't trap us here. I know, I'm sorry, I didn't think it was real. The clicking sounds were forming patterns now, almost like communication. 3 short clicks, pause, 2 long clicks, pause, repeat, over and over, circling the clearing. They're talking to each other, Cassie whispered. Whatever's out there, they're coordinating. As if in response to her words, the clicking stopped. The silence rushed back in, heavy and expectant. Then we heard the voice. It came from the direction of the spring, clear as day, a child's voice singing. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. There's a kid out there, Trevor said, standing up. Someone's kid is lost in the... Marcus grabbed his arm. That's not a kid. What are you talking about? I can hear. Listen to it. Really listen. I forced myself to focus on the voice. It took me a moment to hear what Marcus had noticed. The voice wasn't quite right. The pitch was off, the rhythm mechanical, like someone playing a recording at the wrong speed. And underneath the words, there was a clicking sound, syncing with the movement of what should have been lips. Ring around the rosy. The voice was circling us now, moving between the trees. Pocket full of posies. More voices joined in. One from the left, another from behind us. Then more until we were surrounded by a chorus of children singing that nursery rhyme in their horrible, wrong voices. They were trying to sound human, I realized. Trying to mimic something they'd heard but didn't understand. Get inside, Marcus said. Now! We scrambled into the RV, locking the door behind us. The singing continued outside, growing louder. Through the windows, I could see shapes moving in the darkness, illuminated occasionally by the dying fire. They were roughly child-sized, but they moved wrong, joints bending at strange angles, heads tilting too far to the side. Don't look at them, Marcus said. Don't make eye contact. They're trying to get a reaction. What are they? Cassie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. Local legend talks about things that live in places like this. Things that were here before people, that got displaced or forgotten. They mimic what they see, trying to understand it, but they never quite get it right. How do we make them leave? I don't know. The singing went on for hours. Sometime around midnight it changed to knocking. Deliberate knocks on the RV's sides, on the windows, on the door. Not trying to break in, just letting us know they were there. Reminding us that we were surrounded. I must have fallen asleep despite everything, because the next thing I knew it was morning and Trevor was shaking me awake again. Mad. Something's happened to Cassie. I sat up fast. Cassie was sitting at the dinette, but something about her was wrong. She was staring straight ahead, not blinking, her hands folded perfectly in her lap. When I looked closer, I could see that her chest wasn't moving. She wasn't breathing. Cassie? I reached out to touch her shoulder and she turned her head to look at me. The movement was too smooth, too fluid, like her neck was on ball bearings. Good morning, Madison, she said in a voice that was Cassie's but not Cassie's. Too flat, too even, each word precisely enunciated. What's wrong with her? I asked Marcus, who was standing as far away as the RV's interior allowed. I woke up an hour ago and she was like this. I don't know what happened. Cassie, are you okay? Her smile was perfect and empty. I am well. The holler has been very accommodating. The holler? Yes, it showed me things. Beautiful things. Would you like to see them? No, Marcus said quickly. No, Cassie, we don't want to see them. But they're so beautiful. They're right outside. They want to show you too. They want to show all of you. She stood up, still with that eerie smoothness. We should go outside now. They're waiting. Trevor grabbed her arm. Cassie, snap out of it. Whatever happened to you last night, whatever you saw, it's not real. You need to fight it. She looked at his hand on her arm, then back at his face, and for just a second, something flickered in her eyes. Fear. Real. human fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that empty smile. "Let go," she said, "or they'll make you let go." Trevor dropped her arm like it had burned him. "Cassie, it's me, it's Marcus," her boyfriend said, his voice breaking. "Come back, please. Whatever they did to you, come back." She tilted her head at him, the movement too far past the point where a normal neck would stop. "Marcus. Yes, I remember you. You're important to me." "Yes. Yes, I am. We're together. We're in love." Love. She said it like she was trying out the word for the first time. That's the thing with the racing heart and the intrusive thoughts. I remember that. She reached out and touched his face, her hand cold. "But they showed me something better than love, something bigger. Don't you want to see?" "No? You will." She dropped her hand and walked to the RV door. "They said you'll all see eventually. That's why we're staying. To complete our stay. 3 days we agreed to, remember? The website said 3 days minimum. We're only on day 2. She unlocked the door and stepped outside. We watched through the window as she walked to the center of the clearing and stood there, perfectly still, facing the trees. "We have to get her back inside," I said. "I don't think that's Cassie anymore," Marcus said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, whatever came back, it's not her. Not completely. They took something, or added something, or changed something fundamental. She's not the same person." "You're giving up on her?" "I'm being realistic. You heard her. You saw how she moved. That's not my girlfriend anymore. That's something wearing her shape." We watched Cassie stand motionless in the clearing for 3 hours. She didn't shift her weight, didn't stretch, didn't do any of the small unconscious movements humans make. She just stood there like a statue, and every so often her head would tilt at that impossible angle, tracking movement we couldn't see. Around noon, Trevor broke the silence. "We need to burn the markers." "What?" I asked. "The carved symbols. They're not protecting us. They're keeping us here. If we destroy them, maybe the holler will let us leave. Or maybe it'll get angry," Marcus said. "It's already angry, or hungry, or whatever the hell it is. At least this way we're doing something." I didn't have a better plan. None of us did. So we grabbed supplies from the RV, lighter fluid, matches, anything that would burn, and approached the nearest marker. Cassie's head snapped toward us. "That's not allowed." "We're leaving, Cassie," Trevor said. "We're burning these things down and we're leaving." "You can't leave. You haven't completed your stay. Watch us." Trevor doused the marker in lighter fluid and struck a match. The wood caught immediately, flames racing up the carved symbol. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the clicking sound started up again, furious and close, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Cassie smiled. "They're angry now." The shapes came out of the trees. No more hiding, no more pretending. They walked into the clearing in broad daylight, and I finally saw them clearly. They looked like they were made from parts of different things that didn't quite fit together. Humanish bodies with too many joints, covered in skin that looked more like bark or leather. Faces that tried for human features but got the proportions wrong. Eyes too far apart, mouths too wide, noses that were more like slits. Their movements were jerky and wrong, like stop-motion animation, each step a discrete event rather than part of a continuous motion. There were 7 of them. No, 8. No, I kept losing count because they kept shifting position when I wasn't looking directly at them. "You shouldn't have done that," Cassie said, still smiling. "Now they have to teach you the rules." The nearest one reached Cassie and placed its hand on her shoulder. She shuddered once, violently, and when she looked at us again, the last trace of humanity was gone from her eyes. "Run," Marcus said. We ran. Not toward the paths this time. We knew those were traps. Instead, we crashed directly into the forest. No trail, just desperate scrambling through underbrush and around trees. Behind us, I could hear them following, their clicking communication coordinating the pursuit. My lungs were burning and branches were tearing at my clothes and face, but I kept running. Trevor was beside me, Marcus just ahead. We had no plan except to put distance between us and those things. We ran for what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes. Finally, Marcus stopped, bent over, gasping. "Wait," he managed. "Wait, listen." We stopped. The clicking had ceased. The forest was silent again. "Did we lose them?" Trevor asked. "I don't think they were trying to catch us," Marcus said. "I think they were hurting us." I looked around, trying to get my bearings. The forest looked the same in every direction. Dense, old, dark, even in daylight. But there was something ahead of us, barely visible through the trees. A structure. We approached carefully. It was a house, small and old, made from weathered logs with a sagging porch. Overgrown but still standing, isolated in a clearing much like the one we'd left. "This must be the Kendrick house," Marcus said. "The family I told you about." The front door was open, hanging crooked on its hinges. Inside, I could see a table, chairs, all covered in years of dust and decay. But there was something else too. Symbols carved into every surface. The walls, the furniture, the floor, even the ceiling. All the same symbol from the markers, repeated thousands of times. "He was trying to protect them," I said. "The father. He covered every inch in protective symbols." "It didn't work," Trevor pointed out. "Or it did work for a while, until it didn't. I don't know why we went inside. Maybe because it was the only shelter we'd seen. Maybe because we were too exhausted to keep running. Maybe because some part of us knew we didn't have any other options. The house was a single room with a loft above for sleeping. The furniture was rotted but still arranged like someone might come home any moment. Plates on the table, a coat hanging by the door, a child's doll sitting in one of the chairs. The doll was looking at us, not just facing our direction, actively looking, its head turning slightly to track our movement. It was handmade, cloth body with button eyes, but those button eyes were focused and aware. "Nobody touched that," Marcus said. We backed away from it toward the far wall, and that's when Trevor noticed the writing. Someone had carved words into the logs beneath the protective symbols, a journal of sorts, documenting what had happened to the Kendricks. "June 14th, 1967, Trevor read aloud. "Sarah has been missing for 3 weeks. The search party has given up. They think she's dead. But I saw her last night at the edge of the trees. She was standing with them, with the hollow ones. She looked at me and smiled, but it wasn't her smile, it wasn't my daughter." He moved to another section. "June 20th, they come every night now. They sing Sarah's favorite songs, but they get the words wrong. They knock on the walls. Mary wants to invite them in. She says they're trying to communicate. She says we should be neighborly. I've carved the protection symbols on every surface. I don't know if they're working." June 28th, Mary went outside last night. I woke up and she was just standing in the yard talking to them. She came back different, she moves different. She looks at me like she's seeing something through me instead of at me. I think I've lost her. July 3rd. I understand now. The holler doesn't kill. It changes. It takes what comes in and remakes it into something that belongs here. Sarah belongs here now. Mary belongs here now. They keep asking me to come outside. They say it's better. They say I'll understand if I just come outside. July 5th. I can feel myself changing. I carved the symbols, but I carved them wrong. Or maybe there's no right way to carve them. Maybe the holler was always going to win. This is its place. We were never supposed to be here. Nobody is supposed to be here except the things that were here first. The last entry was just a single word, carved deep and desperate. Sorry. We stood in silence, processing what we'd read. The doll was still watching us, and I realized that it wasn't just any doll. It had been Sarah Kendrick's, the daughter who'd gone missing, the daughter who'd come back wrong. "We need to leave," I said. "We need to leave this house right now." But when we turned to the door, Cassie was standing there, blocking our exit. Behind her, the shapes were gathering in the yard, clicking to each other in their strange language. "You can't leave," Cassie said in that flat, wrong voice. "You haven't completed your stay. 3 days. We agreed to 3 days." "We didn't agree to anything," Trevor said. "That website was a trap." You clicked I accept. You read the terms and conditions and you clicked I accept. That's an agreement. I didn't read any terms and conditions. Nobody reads those. Cassie tilted her head. Perhaps you should have. The shapes were moving closer, surrounding the house. Marcus was looking around frantically, and I saw him counting the symbols carved into the walls. 7 times 7, he muttered. He carved them 7 times 7. That was his protection. That was supposed to be enough. It wasn't, Trevor said. No, but maybe... Marcus pulled out his knife. Maybe he got the count wrong. Maybe it needs to be more. 8 times 8. You're going to carve symbols? Now? You got a better idea? None of us did. Marcus started carving, adding to the father's desperate work. Trevor joined him with his own pocket knife. I kept watching the door, watching Cassie and the shapes beyond her. Madison, Cassie said, you could come outside. It doesn't hurt. It's actually very peaceful. You stop worrying about things. You stop feeling scared or angry or sad. You just are. Don't you want that? No. You're lying. I can tell you're lying. You're terrified right now. Your heart is racing and your hands are shaking and you feel like you're going to throw up. Why hold on to that? Why not let it go? Because it's mine. Because being afraid means I'm still me. Cassie smiled, that empty smile. That's what Sarah said. And Mary. And the father. They all said they wanted to stay themselves. But in the end, they chose peace over pain. They all choose peace eventually. The shapes had formed a circle around the house now, just standing there waiting. I could see them more clearly in the fading light. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all waiting patiently for us to run out of options. Marcus and Trevor worked frantically, carving symbol after symbol, trying to complete whatever protection the father had attempted. The light was fading fast, and soon we'd be in darkness with only our flashlights. I didn't want to see what would happen then. Done, Marcus finally said, stepping back. I think that's it. I think that's the pattern. We waited. Nothing happened. The shapes didn't retreat, but they didn't advance either. They just stood there, clicking to each other like they were discussing what to do. Then the doll moved. It happened so fast I almost missed it. 1 second it was sitting in the chair. The next it was standing on the table, those button eyes fixed on us. Its cloth mouth split open in a smile that showed nothing but darkness inside. Sarah wants to play, Cassie said from the doorway. She's been alone for so long. She just wants someone to play with. The doll jumped. Trevor swung at it with his knife but missed, and it landed on Marcus's shoulder. He screamed and tried to pull it off, but it clung to him, that empty mouth pressed against his ear like it was whispering secrets. When he finally tore it away and threw it across the room, his eyes had changed. Not completely. He still looked like Marcus, still moved like Marcus. But there was something else there too, something looking out from behind his eyes. Marcus? I asked carefully. I'm here, he said, but his voice had that same flatness as Cassie's. I'm fine. Everything's fine now. They showed me, Madison, they showed me such beautiful things. Don't you want to see? Marcus, fight it, Trevor begged. Whatever they did to you, fight it. Why would I fight it? It's perfect. It's peace. It's... He stopped, his face twisting like he was struggling with something. For a moment, the real Marcus was there, terrified and desperate. Run, he gasped out. While I can still... Run! Then whatever had taken hold of him reasserted control, and he lunged for Trevor. I didn't think. I grabbed the doll from where Marcus had thrown it and ran for the door. Cassie tried to block me, but I was ready for that. I threw the doll at her, and she instinctively caught it, and in that moment of distraction I shoved past her. The shapes were right there, close enough to touch. I could smell them, like old wood and decay and something else, something that made my brain hurt to try to identify. But I didn't stop. I ran straight at the circle of them, and they parted for me. I don't know why. Maybe they weren't expecting it. Maybe some part of them recognized desperate prey and instinctively let it bolt. Or maybe they just wanted to see what I'd do. I ran into the forest with no plan, no direction, just blind panic. Behind me, I could hear clicking and the sound of things moving through underbrush and Cassie's voice calling out, "Madison, come back, we need you to complete your stay." I ran until my legs gave out and I collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping for breath, my entire body shaking. I waited for them to find me, for hands to grab me from the darkness, but nothing came. The forest was silent except for my own ragged breathing. After what felt like hours, I forced myself to move. I couldn't stay here. I had to find a way out. The paths didn't work. But maybe if I just kept going in one direction, eventually I'd reach something. A road, another camp, anything. I walked through the night, using my phone's flashlight when I had to, though the battery was draining fast. The forest seemed endless, tree after tree after tree, all of them identical in the darkness. But I kept going because the alternative was stopping. And if I stopped, I would think about Trevor and Marcus and Cassie and what had happened to them. When dawn finally came, I was still walking. The forest looked exactly the same as it had at midnight at 3 a.m. at any other time. But there was something ahead now, something different. I could see a structure through the trees. My heart sank as I got closer. It was the house, the Kendrick house. I'd walked all night in a straight line and somehow ended up back where I'd started. Or maybe not where I'd started. This house looked subtly different, the decay slightly less advanced, the clearing around it a different shape. Like I'd found a different version of the same place. I approached cautiously. The door was open, just like before. Inside, everything was the same. The furniture, the symbols, the carved journal. But there was one difference. Trevor was there, sitting at the table, his hands folded neatly in his lap. "Trevor?" I called from the doorway. He turned to look at me with that same smooth, wrong movement. "Hello, Madison. I've been waiting for you." "What happened? Where's Marcus?" "He's here. They're all here. It's very nice, Madison. You should join us. We can complete our stay together." No, Trevor, we're leaving. We're finding a way out and we're leaving." He smiled, and it was Trevor's smile, but not Trevor's smile. "There is no way out. The holler doesn't let go once it has you. But that's okay. It's peaceful here. You'll see." Behind him, I saw movement in the loft. More shapes coming down the ladder. I recognized Cassie's form, Marcus's, others I didn't know. Maybe the Kendricks, maybe other campers who'd come here over the years and never left. They all wore that same empty smile. "Come inside, Madison," Trevor said. "We're waiting for you. We need you to complete your stay. Only one more day. You can make it one more day, can't you?" I backed away from the door, back into the forest. The shapes followed me out, surrounding me again, but keeping their distance. They weren't forcing me, I realized. They were waiting for me to choose, to give up, to surrender and join them in whatever peaceful emptiness they'd found. I ran again, but I was exhausted now, stumbling over roots and rocks. The shapes followed at a leisurely pace, never quite catching up, never falling behind. They knew I couldn't run forever. They had time. They had all the time in the world. I don't remember when I fell. I just remember lying on the forest floor, too tired to move, too tired to care anymore. The shapes gathered around me, clicking softly to each other. Gentle hands, too many joints, wrong texture, lifted me up and carried me. I woke up back at the clearing with our RV. The sun was setting. I'd lost an entire day. Trevor was there and Cassie and Marcus all sitting around a fire that I didn't remember lighting. They looked up when they saw me, and their smiles were perfectly synchronized. "You came back," Trevor said. "We knew you would." "I didn't come back. You brought me back." "Does it matter? You're here. That's what's important. We're all here together for one more night. Tomorrow we can complete our stay. Tomorrow we can all be at peace." I tried to run again, but my legs wouldn't work. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The shapes emerged from the trees, dozens of them now, maybe hundreds. They formed a circle around the clearing, watching, waiting. The child voice singing started up again, but this time it was Cassie's voice and Trevor's and Marcus's, all singing together in that flat, wrong way. "Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. They held out their hands to me, inviting me to join them. And I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. I was so tired, and they were right that it would be peaceful, that I could stop being afraid and just let go. Join them. Become part of the holler like they had. But then I saw something that brought me back. A flicker of something real in Marcus's eyes. Just for a second. The real him looking out, silently begging me not to give up, not to let them win. I made myself stand up, made myself take a step away from them toward the tree line. "We're waiting for you, Madison," they said in unison. "We'll always be waiting for you." I walked into the forest one more time. Behind me I could hear them singing, hear their clicking coordination, but I didn't look back. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, even when every part of me wanted to stop. I walked all through the night again. But this time something was different. The trees were starting to thin out. I could see sky between the branches, and in the distance I heard something that made me want to cry, the sound of a car on a road. I ran toward it, crashing through the undergrowth. The shapes didn't follow. I didn't know if they couldn't, or if they were just letting me go, content to wait for me to come back on my own. The road was right there, 50 feet ahead. I could see it clearly now. Real asphalt and painted lines and everything. Freedom. I took another step and Trevor was standing in front of me. Not the empty version from the clearing. The real Trevor, or something wearing him perfectly enough that I couldn't tell the difference. He looked scared and desperate and completely human. "Mad," he said, and his voice broke. "Mad, please, don't leave me here, don't leave us here, come back. Complete your stay, and then we can all leave together." "You're not real," I said. "You're not Trevor." "I am. I swear I am. They let me come talk to you. They said if you come back, they'll let all of us go. We just need to complete the 3 days, that's all. That's the agreement." "You're lying." "I'm not. Mad, I love you. I know I don't say it enough, but I love you and I need you to come back. Please." He was so convincing. He knew everything Trevor would know, spoke exactly like Trevor would speak. And if it was really him, if there was even a chance it was really him and I left him here. But then I saw his hand. He was holding it strangely, like he wasn't quite sure how many fingers he was supposed to have. And when I looked closer, I could see the joints weren't bending quite right. "You're not my husband," I said. "Madison, please." "You're not Trevor." I pushed past him and ran for the road. This time nothing stopped me. I burst out of the trees onto blessed, real, solid asphalt. And I didn't stop running until I saw headlights. The truck driver who picked me up thought I was on drugs. I was covered in scratches and dirt, babbling about shapes in the woods and people who weren't people. He took me to the hospital in Pikeville anyway, and that's where I called the police. They went to Redbird Holler 3 days later with a search and rescue team. They found the RV exactly where we'd left it, tires still slashed. They found our supplies, our camping gear, everything. They didn't find Trevor, Cassie, or Marcus. The police say they probably got lost in the woods and are still out there somewhere. That search teams are looking. But I know better. They completed their stay. They're part of the holler now, along with the Kendricks and everyone else who was foolish enough to camp there. I told them everything, but they think I'm crazy or traumatized or making things up. They found the markers I talked about, but they say they're old property boundaries. Nothing sinister. They found the Kendrick house, but they say it's just an abandoned homestead. Nothing unusual about it. They say I'm lucky to be alive, that I must have gotten separated from my friends and wandered for days before finding the road. They say my memories are confused, that trauma does that. They want me to see a therapist, maybe I will. Maybe talking about it will help. But I know what I saw. I know what happened to my husband and my friends. I know they're still there, waiting in the holler, wearing human shapes and empty smiles. And I know they're waiting for me to come back. Because I never completed my stay. I never made it to the 3rd day. And according to the agreement I apparently made when I clicked I accept on that website, I still owe them time. Sometimes late at night I hear clicking sounds outside my motel room. Sometimes I hear singing in voices that are almost human. Sometimes I see my own face in the mirror and wonder if I'm really me. or if something came back with me from the holler. I should leave Kentucky. I should get on a plane and fly as far away as I can. But something keeps me here, keeps me driving past the turnoff to that dirt road, keeps me thinking about Trevor's face when he begged me to come back. I tell myself I'm waiting for them to find him. I tell myself I'm waiting for answers, but the truth is, part of me wants to go back. Part of me wants to complete what I started, to fulfill the agreement, to find that peace they promised. That's the thing about the holler. It doesn't have to chase you. It doesn't have to force you. It just waits, patient and eternal, knowing that eventually, everyone comes home. And tonight, as I sit here writing this, I can feel it waiting. I can feel something outside my window, clicking softly, calling me back. I don't know if I'll be strong enough to resist much longer. I don't know if I want to be.